Farm is there.
Isaias pounding the Bahamas, hurling wind, rain, and more. The hurricane making landfall in the Bahamas earlier, and the hurricane hunters gathering more data to help fine-tune the forecast for the latest tropical threat to our shores. Thanks so much for joining us here for the Weather Channel's continuing coverage of Hurricane Isaias. Here's what we know at this hour about its impacts. States of emergency have been declared in 3 states, Florida, Virginia, and North Carolina. The Kennedy Space Center will be closed tomorrow due to expected rough weather from Isaias. And the SpaceX astronauts will return in the Gulf of Mexico tomorrow. Their splashdown moved from Florida's east coast due to Isaias. Look at the very latest now on the storm with Carl Parker. He is in the lab tracking it. And Carl, not gotten its act together as of yet right now, but that could change.
Yeah, it certainly could, Julie, but right now, yes, a very unimpressive satellite presentation, and you can see that as plain as day as you look at this. It is a Category 1 hurricane, 75-mile-per-hour wind moving northwest at 12 miles per hour, but what you're not seeing there is that big circular deep color, that presentation that we so often associate with hurricanes because of the lack of thunderstorms about the center, and so it really is struggling right now, beset by wind shear and also by drier air. But there is still wind associated with this system. It's important to remember that there's a lot of momentum that is built up here. That's not just going to go away, and so we're going to be looking at wind and impacts along the coast in the form of not just wind but some surge and some very heavy rain, squally weather coming through. No matter what happens with the system, the question is just what level of that do we see depending on what the structure of the storm is as it nears the coast. Right now it's being forecast to be a Category 1 hurricane. As it comes closer to the coast, that's going to be late tonight and the overnight, coming right up from, say, the northern part of South Florida up to the Space Coast, and then starting to pull away some. That's due to the nature of the coastline, and then making its way into the Carolinas beyond that, perhaps as a strong tropical storm. But again, on the satellite presentation, looking at this, so you can see the low-level center very much exposed at this time, and you notice the color there. That's where you see the colder cloud tops that are associated with deep convection or very tall thunderstorms. And optimally, for a tropical cyclone to develop or maintain itself, you'd want to see those thunderstorms wrapping about that center. That is not happening at this time. Some of the modeling suggesting we may see more of that going forward, but it may be more associated with the east side of the circulation, and that's particularly true because you've got winds that are coming out of the west right now in the upper levels. That's a big part of what's going on. We're seeing this wind shear now coming out of the west. Let's take a look at the radar, and you see these bands of showers that are coming through, and as those move through, we're going to see some gustier wind, and I would watch out for these individual cells in particular. These guys, like right in there and right in there, they're a little more likely to produce water spouts, so that certainly is among the many things we need to watch out for going through the rest of the night tonight. Julie, over to you.
So stay out of the water, right? We have more new video, though, coming in to show you as Isaias pushes closer. The kite surfers are out here in Juno Beach. Along with the wind, though, you can certainly see the rough surf out there, the building clouds along many of Florida's coastal communities. Saw another image of this in Lauderdale by the Sea as well, with some kite surfers out there. Mind you, red flags are up all along Florida beaches right now, so you're supposed to be out of the water. Just not worth it. Take a look here at where we're expecting to see the tropical storm force winds coming into place, certainly by tonight in South Florida, by tomorrow morning once we get into Central Florida, and then by Monday morning in we go to Georgia and the Carolinas. So tropical storm force winds, again, are nothing to play around with. We could see power outages here, and unfortunately that could take longer to rectify, we're told, because of COVID. So taking a look here at our hurricane warnings in purple, stretching from Boca Raton all the way up to Daytona Beach. Also a hurricane watch here in orange. So that's ongoing right now. We're dealing with rain bands coming into South Florida. Taking a look at our future radar a little bit farther here to the north, we go to West Palm, Port St. Lucie, starting to see probably some of those rain bands at least by the very early morning hours into the throughout the day tomorrow as well. But we want to get back out now to Dave Melkoff. He is in Fort Lauderdale, where you've already taken a couple of rain bands, Dave, and a little bit of a beating there.
Yeah, it is crazy how you get just this storm on top of you that feels like you're right in the middle of the worst part of the hurricane. But then look at this. Look how bright and sunshiny it is. You can actually see the sun hitting the top part of those clouds up there, but then you can see the rain bands coming in down here. Just on the other side of this break, we'll discuss more about Hurricane Isaias right here on the Weather Channel.
Domino's knows delivery.
Up today.
All right, we have some new video from the hurricane hunters, and this time inside the plane. And, you know, one of the things that you've got to get used to when you're a hurricane hunter is a terrific amount of turbulence. It can be really nerve-wracking for people that don't like that. And you can see the plane really bouncing around at times there. You can actually take you out of your seat, and you certainly don't want to have anything loose. For example, a hot coffee would be just completely off limits in a situation like that. And, you know, these guys go in there. It's wow, look at that. A dangerous job, and it's invaluable. The data that they give us is very, very important because they're giving us direct observations, showing us exactly what's going on inside the storm. And, you know, these next hurricane hunter flights that are out in it right now are going to be really critical because we're going to be able to find out whether or not we're seeing some weakening of the system right now. What we've seen for several hours now is a lack of thunderstorms about the center. And in order for our tropical cyclone to develop and maintain its intensity, you've got to have this area of thunderstorms around the center. It's a heat engine, and that's a critical part of that heat engine to have those thunderstorms about the center. We're just not seeing that right now because there's wind shear. There's very strong wind coming out of the west. There's also dry air being injected into the system, and that's keeping the tallest thunderstorms away from that center. So the big question is that going to be the case going forward? And we might see some answers here in this new run of the European model, which is showing a depiction of a system that is similar to what we've got right now, where there is some convection on the east and southeast side of the circulation, but again, it's still got the wind shear in place. And so perhaps as we're getting closer to the early morning hours, and the system is making a closer approach to the coast, what we'll see is that deeper convection, the taller thunderstorms are away to the east, and we've got sort of an exposed center moving in along the west. And, you know, Julie, that would be good because that would mean that we would certainly see a lot of wind in these coastal areas, but not as much as we would have had there been thunderstorms wrapping all the way around the center. So we can hope that is going to be the case through tonight and tomorrow.
We will hope so. Regardless, the Florida coast is not the only game in town here. We're looking at the Carolinas also coming into play for impacts from Isaias. Taking a look here at perhaps a strong tropical storm by Monday evening, arriving in Savannah and in Charleston, up through Myrtle Beach by maybe Monday late into Tuesday, and then off we go into Raleigh, eventually into Virginia, with perhaps some tropical storm force winds and plenty of rainfall as well. So the rain here on Monday stretching from Florida all the way up into the mid-Atlantic and into the northeast. So some of these coastal areas could be getting hit with some pretty heavy doses of rain. It just depends on, again, how organized the storm gets, how close it gets to shore as well. The European model takes the heaviest rainfall a little further inland here from Virginia back down into Raleigh. Myrtle Beach could be getting maybe as much as 6 or 7 inches of rainfall. The American model kind of puts that bullseye more in the Wilmington, Myrtle Beach area, with 5 to 8 inches of rainfall coming in from this particular hurricane. So Monday through Wednesday, that could really be the time where we could see some major flood issues coming in right across the Carolina border there. Also, of course, the wind is going to be a factor here. We'll likely see tropical storm force winds persisting here even as we get into Monday night into Tuesday, coming up the coast. So up from Georgia through South and North Carolina into Virginia by Tuesday morning, still dealing with it here. Those onshore winds, and certainly we could see those gusts up over tropical storm force strength. So a lot of factors in play here for the Carolinas as well as Florida. as we do see the storm start to work its way into the north. Just getting word now of a tornado warning in Ohio we want to get you out to. This is for Washington County, Ohio. It goes until 4:15 local time here. We are looking at, again, a pocket of very strong storms coming right across I-77 there, and we take a look closer at this particular tornado warning. Not seeing a ton of rotation showing up with our radar estimates right now, but nonetheless capable, at least a radar indicated perhaps a tornado warning here in Ohio. This again, Washington, Ohio, until 4:15 local time. These storms firing up as they move through the Ohio Valley. If you do live in this area, you do want to take shelter right now. Again, Washington County, Ohio. So we are looking at the bigger picture here to give you perspective south of Cambridge there along I-77 in Ohio. Also a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings starting to pop in the Ohio Valley. All right, let's head now to Boynton Beach, and this is a look at the scene there for you. Gusting to 27 right now. Looks like a rain band pushing through your area there in Boynton Beach, Florida as well. This is going to be a familiar scene, I'm afraid, in Florida over the next couple of days, or at least next several hours. We're going to see the bands from Isaias continue to push on shore. Taking a look at live radar right now, certainly seeing that push coming in there in the Fort Lauderdale area, almost into West Palm Beach right now. Certainly just the beginning, though, of what's going to be a long several hours of persistent rain bands and wind eventually picking up here in Florida. Tropical storm force winds expected to arrive by tonight.
Hey, that way.
Better days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy skies. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. Low 74. Sunday, sunshine and clouds mixed. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 60%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
New video just into the Weather Channel. You are looking at Fort Lauderdale Beach here in Broward County as one of these large outer bands of Hurricane Isaias comes through, and it just dumps a ton of water. It only takes about 5 minutes for one of these bands to come through, but it is dangerous because you can get up to 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That's what we're getting so far. And it didn't stop this guy from going out for his morning run, just trying to run down the beach. We don't see anybody doing that right now, but that was here in Fort Lauderdale, and you can see what a difference just a few minutes makes. I mean, we are in bright and sunny weather right now. It's something that South Florida residents experience all the time when they have tropical storms and hurricanes coming through. People who've been here for generations expect this. They know how to prepare for it. They know what to do in the case of a hurricane. But tourists who are coming down here, and they are still arriving even as early as this morning, they are still arriving here. They may not know what to do in a hurricane like this. That's why we got the messaging out there from the mayor of Fort Lauderdale just minutes ago in the soaking rain.
Well, we've already been prepared for hurricanes. We have already been prepared for this moment. And what we weren't prepared for was thinking that a pandemic was going to come into our community and make things more complicated. But I think that the community realizes this is the weekend to stay home. This is the weekend that we stay with our families, we shelter in place. It's not for parties. Just, be safe, be careful, and certainly stay off the beach. And we're experiencing one of the early squalls right now. and it's going to only get worse.
Couple of the interesting facts about having a hurricane and a pandemic at the same time. Here in Florida, they are approaching 500,000 positive cases, and all the people who have been doing their social distancing and staying inside for months and months have the supplies at home. So now these pandemic supplies are now transitioning to hurricane supplies. So the people who are being asked to shelter in place, Carl, are already just doing what they've been doing since March, and they have the supplies to do it.
Yeah, and we're very happy to see that the storm is not a fearsome-looking storm on satellite right now. It's certainly what we were hoping for, that we would see something a little bit less than what could have been. And indeed, when you look at this satellite presentation, I mean, you know, you're hard-pressed to figure out where in the heck the thing actually is. That's how degraded it is right now by wind shear and by dry air. It is now officially a hurricane, 75-mile-per-hour storm. The hurricane hunters are heading out there right now. We've got a new forecast package coming up from the National Hurricane Center in about an hour. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens at that time. This was the forecast as of the 11 a.m. advisory, calling for a hurricane to move up and along the coast starting late tonight and into the overnight and early tomorrow, and then making its way towards the Carolinas. But whether or not they're going to continue to forecast a hurricane is also an interesting question, because again, it's just not a very healthy storm at this time. There's certainly a lot of wind associated with it. There's a lot of momentum that is built up. That doesn't just go away, even if you don't have a lot of thunderstorms wrapped about the center of the storm. So it's going to be windy. Could very well that we end up getting tropical storm winds up the coast, not so much in the way of hurricane force winds. But here's what Dave was talking about. We watched this line of storms come through. Behind that, a lot of clear sky. It's actually just going to be gusty and not so bad in South Florida for a lot of the rest of the evening. And then here you see the low-level center of the storm right in there, and there are some taller thunderstorms that are away from that center, and we're just now beginning to see some bursting on the north and east side. If you think about what's happening with the wind shear, you've got wind shear coming in like this, and then you've got some drier air as well. And so that structure may continue right through tonight and tomorrow, where, Julie, we see thunderstorms on the east side of the circulation, and the west side of the circulation is just lower cloud and showers. And so in that case, Julie, we would not see as much wind, and that certainly is what we're hoping for there in eastern Florida.
That would be good. Yeah, actually, Carl will continue to follow that, but we're actually following some severe weather at the moment as well in the Ohio Valley. In fact, a tornado warning in Ohio, southeastern Ohio, to get you out to right now. This is for Washington County, and it goes until 4:15 local time. Right now, moving to the east at around 20 miles per hour. This is radar indicated rotation. No confirmation on this yet, but looks like coming right through Marietta there, right along I-77. If you live in this area, you do want to get to your safe spot right now. Taking a look here at our velocity, noticing some of the reds and greens are the different directions in terms of the wind and the radar. Not a real strong signature at the moment. Nonetheless, if you live in Washington County, Ohio, now is the time to take shelter. A tornado warning till 4:15.
I don't know now.
Everyone should at this point have enough food, water, and medicine to last 7 days. Know whether you're in an evacuation zone, and if you are ordered to evacuate, please take it seriously and go.
Right now, Hurricane Isaias lashing the Bahamas with heavy rain and gusty winds. Its next stop, the east coast of Florida. Nearly 4 million people are under a hurricane warning. The Weather Channel's Dave Melkoff will join us. He's live from Fort Lauderdale with more on how residents and emergency managers are preparing for this hurricane. Welcome back to the Weather Channel's continuing live coverage of Hurricane Isaias. We'll check in with storm specialist Carl Parker in just a moment. First, some new video coming in out of St. Andrews Island in the Bahamas. The winds really lashing around the trees here pretty hard. The storm making landfall there in San Andreas Island in the Bahamas earlier today. I actually spoke with a business owner there. He says conditions are better now than they were then. However, a lot of wind and rainfall coming along with Isaias as it did make landfall there and now sets aim for the U.S. coast. Here's what we know right now. Residents of Ocracoke Island are preparing to evacuate. Hyde County, North Carolina officials posted a mandatory evacuation order that goes into effect tomorrow for those who live on the island. Now looking as though SpaceX astronauts will splash down in the Gulf of Mexico tomorrow, ending their historic mission. Officials moved their landing from Florida's east coast due to Isaias. And Florida's 21 COVID-only facilities are equipped with generators if power goes out due to Isaias. So we want to get the very latest now on the storm, a very ragged-looking storm at the moment. Carl, I believe you said you're noticing some more thunderstorm development, though, maybe on the northern side of it.
Yeah, that's right, and maybe that's what we're going to be seeing going forward. But, I'll tell you, when you look at this from a satellite perspective, for, in instance, try to find the center of circulation there. If you didn't know, you probably wouldn't know that it's right in there. That's where the center of the hurricane is. That's how disorganized this thing is. A 75-mile-per-hour storm right now. It's still got a lot of wind, and even as a disorganized storm, that wind is not going to come down quickly, and that's going to be brushing the coast. So it may very well be that we end up getting more tropical storm force conditions than anything else. Right now, it's forecast to continue to be a hurricane as it moves up and along the coast. We've got a new forecast package coming from the National Hurricane Center, and that'll be out at 5 p.m. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with it then, the plane now going out into the system. But we've been seeing this wind shear that's been coming into the system for a while now, and that certainly is a big part of why it is so disorganized. Also, there's been drier air wrapping into that circulation. So the net result is that you've got a low-level circulation sitting right in there, and thunderstorms not really wrapping about that center. We're just starting to see some development on the north side, but it may continue to have that structure as it's coming up and along the coast, in which case we wouldn't get as much wind and impact there on the coast. Most of the weather, the worst weather, would be farther out to sea on the east side of the circulation. You look closer here, you see some banding now coming on shore. We're getting some stronger thunderstorms now beginning to approach, not really thunderstorms, but showers and banding features coming towards Palm Beach Gardens and also into Jupiter. And I want to show you the model forecast very quickly here. This is the European model, and this is what I'm talking about, where you have the center there and you've got thunderstorms that are displaced off to the east of that center of circulation, in which case the worst of the weather would be out over the open water. We certainly would get very gusty wind there along the coast and some water level rise as well, but that is definitely a better case than it would be if we saw thunderstorms wrapping all the way around that center. We want to go out now to our Dave Malkoff. He's been reporting from Fort Lauderdale, and Dave, this could be some good news. Certainly we didn't want to see a hurricane coming into Florida with all of the coronavirus concerns there, and it may be that we don't get the worst of this storm going through tonight and tomorrow.
Well, that is good news, and the person who can really talk to that is Governor Ron DeSantis, who is joining us live from Tallahassee from the EOC. Governor, thank you for joining us. We have this very unusual situation. I know that you talked to President Trump. You asked for a emergency declaration here that frees up some funds to actually let you get vouchers for people to stay in hotels so they are not staying in a big auditorium altogether. How do those vouchers actually work? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, actually, we initially had proposed that several months ago, but it turns out it's easier for us to just contract directly with hotels. So what you'll have is you'll have hotels available, depending on how the counties are handling that, for people who really require individual living and not in congregate settings. There also will be some congregate sheltering with appropriate social distancing, and of course, by the president doing the approval of the declaration, that gives us the ability to get FEMA reimbursement for all the food and all the sheltering, should that be needed. Now, I will say one of the things we were concerned with when we saw the storm forming initially is just to make sure our hospitals were okay. And because of I think the strength of the storm, Most of the hospitals aren't going to report any problems. I think we have one hospital out on Cape Canaveral that's moved a handful of COVID patients to a hospital on the mainland, but we're really concerned about that, but actually feel good about it. And then also our long-term care facilities. I mean, that's really ground zero for COVID-19 effects. And we in Florida now have over 4,000 facilities. All of them have working generators. We also have 20 COVID-only nursing facilities for isolation of COVID-positive nursing home residents. Those all have functioning generators. So as we're looking at the storm, and I think you guys pointed out, it has weakened today, which is obviously a good thing. But from our perspective, you have 70-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, that's going to cause debris. That's going to cause some power outages. And people still need to be prepared and understand that we will still see some effects from it.
Yeah, it was interesting. We saw some tourists here yesterday who didn't even know that the hurricane was on its way, despite all of your messaging, despite all of our messaging as well. They were actually informed by the Uber driver that there was a hurricane coming. And so they're coming to a place where there's not only a hurricane, but you've just passed about 480,000 positive tests here. There may be even more than that. Is there any plan for a statewide mask mandate? 30-plus states have already done that. Any plan for it here?
Well, we have a number of guidelines, including facial coverings, including social distancing, protecting the elderly, and then also proper hygiene. Those are advisory in Florida. They're not punitive. We're not going to have criminal penalties on it. But I think what we've seen is, we've seen a lot of compliance throughout the state. I think we are seeing good trends in terms of our visits to hospitals being down, in terms of the hospital census for COVID really moving down dramatically in the last week, and we anticipate we'll continue to see that. And I think that that's just a testament to a lot of Floridians, really following the guidelines and taking the proper precautions.
And I listened to your press conference at this morning, and you have another one coming up at 5 o'clock. Can you give us a preview of what you're going to say at that 5 o'clock press conference that's different, that you've learned since the morning press conference?
Well, I think we're obviously going to talk to the National Hurricane Center. They usually will give us a heads up on what's going to be in the 5 p.m. advisory. So we're going to incorporate that into our guidance as well. And then we'll provide an update on some of the things that are going on across the state. I mean, I had mentioned earlier about all the meals that are ready, the water bottles that are ready. We also have thousands and thousands of utility workers that are just standing by up and down the East Coast, because we understand when there's power outages, getting that power back on is very important. So we're working with our utility companies here in the state of Florida, to make sure that they're ready, and they do a really good job. I mean, they're pros at this. This isn't their first rodeo, and I think everybody here realizes that when the power's out, the quicker you can get it back on, you can have calm restored and people feel a lot better.
Thank you so much, Governor Ron DeSantis, joining us live from Tallahassee, from the Emergency Operations Center up there. Have a great day. Well, as he mentioned, there are long-term care facilities that are here in Florida. About 70,000 Florida residents are in those long-term care facilities, and there are not only generators there for the life-saving equipment that they have, and they're the life support equipment, but they've also got a separate backup generator there where they can run the air conditioning. So there's actually two sets of air conditioners, two sets of generators, one to run the air conditioner, one to run the life support systems. So if the power would go out in those areas, those residents who are very, very at risk will still have their power. Now, there are places that are specifically COVID isolation units, but inside some of the larger long-term care facilities, they actually have wings of the nursing homes that are walled off, that can actually hold some of their patients there who are COVID positive. They've got the positive air in there to make sure that everything's contained to those areas. So not only do they have COVID positive patients inside those facilities that are specifically for COVID positive patients, but they also have people who have come back positive in the general population, but they are actually moved to their isolation units. So a lot of work has gone into this, Julie, and a lot of planning, but it looks like we may get the best case scenario here in Florida for this one, but we are just on the outer edge of hurricane season.
Yeah, hopefully this will just be a good rehearsal, right? You know, because it is looking like a ragged storm at the moment, Dave. Thank you for that live report, and of course we are continuing to follow the timing of Isaias as well, expecting to see still probably some tropical storm force winds at least coming in through South Florida by tonight. We could see those move up the coast by tomorrow and then into Georgia and the Carolinas come Monday. Again, depending on how this storm really takes shape, as it is now continuing to show kind of some raggedness there. But for you in Miami, we could see 40-mile-per-hour gusts. Those would be through tonight coming your way there, Miami-Dade County, 30-mile-per-hour gusts through tomorrow as well. So the timing here looks like this: showers, thunderstorms, certainly those rain bands working their way onshore throughout the evening tonight with the gusty weather there for you in Miami. Also, as we head farther north into West Palm Beach, Port St. Lucie, looks like by tomorrow morning some of those rain bands working their way into your areas there with the onshore winds, which could be tropical storm force in nature as well. And really no shortage of these rain bands coming onshore throughout much of Florida throughout the day tomorrow. For you in Daytona Beach, looks like your worst wind weather could be tomorrow night. 60-mile-per-hour winds in excess of 60 mile per hour perhaps coming your way with 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. So we also have the flood issue to worry about and storm surge, and for that we go over to Carl Parker.
Yeah, Julie, right now there is a forecast for 2 to 4 feet of storm surge along much of the east coast of Florida, from Jupiter on northward into Vero, into Melbourne, the Space Coast, and on up past Daytona Beach as well. Now that is a function of just how much weather we end up seeing along the coast and what kind of structure we have from this storm. We could see hurricane force winds in coastal areas generally along and east of 95 in eastern Florida, but as we have said a number of times, right now the structure of the storm is not that impressive. We're just not seeing thunderstorms wrapping about that center of circulation, which is right in there, and so the model's indicating that that kind of structure may continue to be seen here going forward. This is looking at tomorrow morning 6 a.m. We've got weather on the east side of the circulation there, but not so much in the coastal part of Florida. Same thing going into tomorrow evening 6 p.m. You've certainly got plenty of thunderstorms offshore, but not so much onshore, and so that's going to bring down the wind potential. It's in those thunderstorms where you have the maximum wind potential. When you've got a big band of storms around the eye wall or a band that's just outside of the eye wall, that's where you get the strongest winds. And if you don't have as much of that, if you've got, you know, just showers for the most part coming into these areas along the coast, well, that's going to bring down that wind potential, and it's also going to bring down the surge potential as well. So that seems to be the direction in which we're heading, where the conditions are not quite as bad as we had feared, but certainly the storm, Julie, is going to pack a punch, and as it moves to the north of this area, it's going to come up into the Carolinas and potentially produce a lot of very heavy rain.
Yeah, the coastal Carolina is keeping a wary eye on Isaias too, from Charleston, South Carolina to Wilmington, North Carolina, and all along the Outer Banks. Isaias has the potential to have even stronger winds, heavy rain, and storm surge there. So yes, the Carolinas also bracing for whatever the storm may bring. It looks like we could still be dealing with tropical storm force winds by Monday evening in Savannah and Charleston. By the time we get into Myrtle Beach and in through Raleigh, maybe a 60-mile-per-hour storm by the time we get into Tuesday morning. So all along these coastal areas, we're going to have to watch out for certainly the power outage situation there as well. Rain as well is going to be pretty widespread all the way from Florida up the coast into the mid-Atlantic, even into the Northeast eventually with this particular system. And some of that rain could be pretty heavy at times. So we're going to watch out for the flooding issues as well. The European model takes it here a little bit farther inland here from Richmond down to Raleigh, maybe as much as 5 to 8 inches of rainfall. And then just outside of Myrtle Beach as well, some heavy rain coming in according to the European. Now the American model, a little bit different solution here, brings the heaviest rainfall right into Myrtle Beach and right along the North Carolina, South Carolina border. So gonna have to watch out for the flood threat with this as well. Not only the coastal flooding, but the inland flooding from heavy rainfall.
Want a career where you can make
Live on the ground. Right now it's coming down.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 74. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday, partly cloudy. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday night, variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Here with live Isaias coverage here on the Weather Channel. Look at this video from just about an hour ago from North Miami Beach. Wow, that's a lot of rain and a lot of wind coming down. That's what we're experiencing, and believe it or not, these are just the first outer bands of this storm as Isaias approaches the Florida coastline. But look at the difference as we dissolve back here live about 40 minutes north of there. We are in Fort Lauderdale Beach right now, and look at the sunshine, look at the birds here, and even some people on the beach now, and it is just so different than it was just an hour ago. That same squall that you saw in North Miami Beach is the same squall that we got walloped by right here on Fort Lauderdale Beach. Now, here is the good news so far. We have a bit of disorganization happening with this storm where it's kind of coming apart a little bit, but it still is a threat to the Florida coastline, not only a threat to rainfall and also storm surge, but you've got the high wind threat, and that could start things blowing around. We're talking about palm fronds and pieces of furniture that have been left out, and also some coconuts that could fly around, and if those blow around, those could cause damage to vehicles. It could also take down power lines. I just talked to the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and he told me that they have lots and lots of crews that are out there waiting to put on the power if it comes off. But I mean, some people we talked to didn't even know that the storm was coming as they came down here as tourists. Take a look at this.
I didn't know at all.
We found out yesterday, yeah, from a Uber driver. She said there was going to be a hurricane. We should probably hit the beach before the hurricane.
The Uber driver had to tell you.
Yes.
These Georgia tourists aren't alone. We saw plenty of people checking in, eating at restaurants, both outside and inside, some with masks, some without, all as the Florida Department of Health added 8,983 positive coronavirus tests on Thursday. That was before the approaching hurricane forced many of those testing sites to shut down.
Well, we knew that Florida's cases are rising in corona, but we were thinking, you know, why stay home when we have the same thing going on at home in Maryland, so why not come to the beach and enjoy it?
Have a vacation.
For reference, the Maryland Department of Health statewide number is around 88,000 positive tests. That is less than 20% of Florida's confirmed cases.
It's okay. We feel safe. We feel good. We feel like the hotel has provided everything that we need, and we have lots of Clorox wipes and Lysol and hand sanitizer.
Just getting those supplies is already complicated. There are long lines here in Miami-Dade County. And we talked to some locals who are very aware of this incoming storm.
We always are prepared for hurricane season, so we have food, water, batteries, flashlights, candles.
But we pretty much have everything ready to go because we had everything for the pandemic at the house, so we're not too worried.
So the lockdown may have actually helped Americans get ready for Hurricane Isaias as pandemic supplies became storm supplies. Sheltering in place, nothing new.
No, we just take our precautions.
Yeah, mask, wash your hands, social distance.
Yeah, we're following everything.
I mean, it's scary, but why sit at home and not be at the beach? And you can do that here, so.
Yeah, you may think that there is a big difference between the population of Maryland and the population of Florida, but they are coming from an area where there are about 20% of the cases that there are here. So there are more cases. It's more of a risk to come to Florida than it is to stay home in Maryland, especially when you don't even know that the hurricane is coming. That was the point that we were making there. But still, that's what the mayor of Fort Lauderdale told me. He wants to make sure that people aren't coming here and gathering together, having parties. That's definitely not something that they want to see happening. This is some cases that nobody's ever been in before, where they have a pandemic and a hurricane coming at the same time, Julie. And this is still a threat. There is still possibility that it could be a rainy, windy day around here.
Yeah, Dave, as you know, covering hurricanes, a lot of times people do have those parties and they get together while they're waiting it out, and that is certainly not recommended during these times, right, with COVID. All right, that's Dave Malkoff there in Fort Lauderdale for us. We do have plenty of rainfall in the forecast right now, seeing some of those extreme outer bands working their way here into South Florida. Dave has gotten a couple of those already. We'll continue to see those push through as we move throughout the evening tonight and into tomorrow as well. Really, as the storm gets closer and closer to the coast, looking at that rain, really no shortage of it coming in here to the eastern coast of Florida and even into the Carolinas eventually. So this is a look at how much rainfall we are expecting over the next 5 days, keeping it here, at least this particular model, offshore out over the open water, which is what we're hoping for here. But it just depends on how much this storm may wobble a little closer here to the coast, whether or not we get some of that coastal flooding, maybe even some inland flash flooding as well as a result. Well, we have team coverage here of Isaias, and this is continuing here
from the Life Artois.
Winds increasing in South Florida. This is along North Miami Beach. Along with the rising winds, you can see the clouds build there, the rain shaft off the distance as those bands from Isaias roll ever closer. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Weather Channel's continuing coverage of Hurricane Isaias. If power goes out, well, Florida Power and Light say it may take longer to restore it. COVID-19 is the reason why. Officials say steps that need to be taken to keep crews safe could slow down power restoration efforts. The city of Myrtle Beach has issued a civil emergency declaration, and the states of Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida have declared states of emergency. 72 million people along the East Coast are in the 5-day cone for Isaias. So you want to get the very latest on this storm. What it's doing right now hasn't been super impressive all day long, Carl. Anything changing?
Well, I'll tell you, the hurricane hunters have been out in the system, and the reliable readings they are finding going right across the center of circulation are winds in the middle 50s. So it may very well be that coming up at the 5 p.m. advisory, we're going to have a tropical storm instead of a hurricane. And, you know, clearly, as you look at the satellite imagery, it is not a very well organized system, though we are seeing some interesting features near that center of circulation, which I'll show you in a moment. So as of now, it is a Category 1 hurricane, but again, that could change coming up with the new advisory, and we'll get a full forecast package here within the next half an hour coming from the Hurricane Center. Right now forecast to be a hurricane as it passes along the east coast of Florida. That too could change. Certainly there would be a change in the downstream forecast depending on what we've got right now. And you know what's been driving this is very strong wind aloft coming into that circulation, wind shear as we call it, which is generally the enemy of tropical cyclones, and also some very dry air air, and that too can serve to weaken the thunderstorms near the center. So we've seen this exposed center for hours and hours now, and if you don't have thunderstorms wrapping about that center, generally you're going to see a weakening trend. What is interesting is that we are now beginning to see a flare-up of thunderstorms on the north side of that center of circulation, which is sitting again right in there. So we're starting to see the storm trying to bounce back a little bit. The question is, will those thunderstorms be able to wrap about the center during the time that it is offshore? It's got a lot of time offshore. It may remain offshore as it's moving up and along the coast. So it's got time to reorganize, and the question is it going to do that? And it's certainly got a well-established wind field, and so if we do see a resurgence of those thunderstorms near the center, we could see a strengthening, and certainly we could be looking at some stronger conditions along the coast. But it may also be that we continue to see storms on the north and east side of the circulation and not storms on the west side of the circulation, in which case we wouldn't see as much wind, and we might be talking about tropical storm conditions along the east coast and less storm surge as opposed to hurricane conditions and a more substantial surge. So this could be very good news that we're seeing perhaps a weakening to a tropical storm at this time. Julie?
All right. Well, another way to show you the winds in Florida as Isaias pushes closer. Yeah, the kite surfers are out here in Juno Beach. Along with the wind, you can see off in the distance that rough surf, the building clouds along many of the Florida coastal communities. Mind you, red flags are up all along Florida beaches, not supposed to be in the water. So certainly not advised, but you're always going to have people out there surfing or kite surfing when these conditions start. So we take a look here at the timing for Florida. It does look like we will see at least tropical storm force winds start to work their way into South Florida by tonight, into Central Florida by tomorrow morning, and then by Monday into Georgia and the Carolinas. So we could see winds very gusty there. Hurricane warnings are still up here from Boca all the way up to Daytona Beach. Hurricane watch here in orange as well. So still having our warnings up there. We do look at our future radar showing West Palm Beach, Port St. Lucie, maybe getting some of those rain bands starting to work their way your way by early tomorrow morning, and then continuing throughout the day tomorrow, your Sunday. And that will be the case for much of Florida tomorrow, I think, because those rain bands are really just getting started. Some very outer bands working their way into the Fort Lauderdale area where Dave Malkoff is located, and we've seen those come and go. So 60-mile-per-hour gusts will probably be the worst of your winds coming in here to Daytona Beach. That would be on Sunday evening. We want to get it back out now to Dave Malkoff. He is in Fort Lauderdale, and Dave, dealing with some rain on and off. Now looks like sun.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've got a huge band of storm on top of us, north of us, and then we've got storm going on in Miami right now. But here in Fort Lauderdale Beach, there is nothing but sunshine and blue sky. People even coming back out to the beach. But this storm is actually going to move up the coast. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. This is the Weather Channel.
Kids can...
Well, some new video from the cockpit of a NOAA Hurricane Hunter flight, and these are very brave souls that do an invaluable service driving into the middle of these oftentimes fierce storms. And you can see look at that, isn't that amazing, that view there of the center of the circulation when it was a lot more well-defined. And it's nothing like that now. It's an exposed center, and we actually might be looking at a tropical storm at this time. The hurricane hunters are actually out in the system right now, and what they have found in terms of reliable measurements are wind speeds topping out in the middle 50s. That was as they went right across the center of the circulation. So they came in from the northwest side and went right down across the center and down towards Andros Island. And again, in terms of reliable readings, what they found were winds in the middle 50s. So it's entirely possible that we're going to be looking at a tropical storm coming up with the new advisory, and that'll be out within the next 20 minutes or so. And, we've been saying all along that the storm is not a healthy looking storm at all, because you have this low level center that's been exposed for most of the day today. And unless you've got thunderstorms wrapping about that center, you're not going to see a maintenance. You're not going to see the system maintaining its intensity. But what is interesting about that is that we are now actually seeing a flare-up of thunderstorms on the north side of that circulation. So all the things that have been bothering the system so thoroughly today, the wind shear and the dry air, maybe we're seeing a cessation of that, at least in that sector of the storm. So it's also possible that storms could wrap about that center once again, especially in the evening hours. That's when we tend to see a maximum of convective activity or thunderstorms, and it's possible that we see the storm getting stronger once again. So it's not at all unusual to see this sort of a fluctuation when you've got environmental conditions that are not as favorable for a storm. And this is a look at the model forecast, and what it's showing here is more of that type of thing. That's 5 o'clock in the morning. And so you see thunderstorms there on the east and northern side of the circulation. So it may well be that as the storm comes up and along the coast, it's got that sort of a structure where there's weather on the east side of it and there's not as much weather on the west side of it. And of course, the west side is the side that's going to be tangling with the east coast of Florida. So in that case, that would reduce the impacts, Julie. We'd be more likely to see tropical storm force winds as opposed to hurricane force winds. And so we can certainly hope that that will be the case. Over to you.
That's right, and as it continues to move up the coast, we're looking at the Carolinas coming into play as well, Carl. Taking a look here at Monday evening, could still be dealing with a tropical storm at this point for Savannah, Charleston, also into Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, Raleigh, up into Virginia come Tuesday. So some impacts here in the Carolinas as well. Rainfall is going to be a factor, of course, with this particular system. Some of these coastal areas, very low-lying areas, we could be dealing with flooding, certainly, and the rain really piling up even a little farther inland. So that's something we're going to have to watch. The European model brings a lot of the really heavy rainfall in through portions of Virginia, in through Raleigh here, maybe down into Myrtle Beach, right across the border, maybe 5 to 8 inches over the next couple of days through Wednesday. The U.S. model, the GFS model, brings the heaviest rain really right here from Wilmington down to Myrtle Beach. That's the bullseye according to the American model. Either of these scenarios certainly enough to cause flash flooding in these areas. So it's definitely something to watch. It's going to be a big factor, I think, in the coming days. Onshore winds as well. Our wind speeds could be a tropical storm force nature by the time they cross from Georgia into the Carolinas and beyond. So that is something, again, we're going to have to watch for power outages in these areas from Myrtle Beach up into Wilmington, certainly Charleston, another city to watch, not only for the flood threat, but for the power issues as well. And eventually all of this continues to pull to the north over the next few days. So eventually making its way into the Outer Banks of North Carolina here by Tuesday night. And beyond that, into the Mid-Atlantic we go. So we take a look at Charleston, your forecast, then expect the wind and the storms at least through Monday evening. As I mentioned, Carl, everything then heads into the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, an important point about that is that even though the storm has been struggling today, it is possible that it gets more organized in the next couple of days before it comes into the Carolinas and then comes up into the Northeast. So we could be looking at a very concentrated area of deep tropical moisture moving into that very heavily populated Northeast corridor. And this is the European model showing the heavy rain coming up around D.C. and the Delmarva, the Chesapeake Bay. That's into Tuesday evening, then up into the New York City metro by late Tuesday and early Wednesday, and then beyond that and into parts of New England into late Wednesday. We'll be picking up in speed at that time. So looking at the forecast for precipitation, this is the European model forecast, and you know, this is really quite something because in New York City, for example, because you've got so much concrete and asphalt, it doesn't take as much for there to be a lot of flooding. So that is going to be our worry. And here is the new advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and indeed they have dropped it a notch to 70 miles per hour. So a tropical storm at this time, now moving northwest at 10 miles per hour. And so as we've said, there's been some weakening without thunderstorms wrapped about that center today. And so we're perhaps going to see a little bit less of an impact along the east coast of Florida, less than had been feared. And right now a tropical storm Isaias will in just a moment.
Love it that way.
Better days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 74. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday, partly cloudy. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday night, variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
We also have thousands and thousands of utility workers that are just standing by up and down the East Coast, because we understand when there's power outages, getting that power back on is very important. So we're working with our utility companies here in the state of Florida, to make sure that they're ready, and they do a really good job. I mean, they're pros at this. This isn't their first rodeo, and I think everybody here realizes that when the power's out, the quicker you can get it back on, you can have calm restored and people feel a lot better.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis talking power crews with me just a moment ago, as he was saying that all those power crews are on standby, because with all this rain and all this wind, you could still get some power outages, and you don't want to have that, especially if you have people who are storing their food in refrigerators, and they need air conditioning in their home, and it gets very, very hot inside homes when you are trying to ride out a storm like this. Speaking of the storm, Hurricane Isaias has now lost its hurricane status. It is now Tropical Storm Isaias once again, just because of the wind speed. We are in the middle of one of those outer bands. This is kind of like a bubble of the storm that has broken off and is sitting right on top of us in Fort Lauderdale. But Carl, this is kind of disorganized still, but it still carries with it the risk of storm surge and the risk of water and wind.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. It's just a shade below hurricane status and, could actually regain hurricane status. It's expected to do that. That is in the forecast from the Hurricane Center. So right now, a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. The hurricane hunters just out in the storm and not finding terribly strong winds in that exposed low-level center. You can tell from the satellite presentation that it's not a very well-organized storm at this time. And here are some of the changes with this new forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Looking for it to be a hurricane once again by the time we get into later tomorrow, but then weaken to a tropical storm again as it's coming up and along the coast, and then continue to weaken after that, maybe being a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm coming into North and South Carolina, and that would be early on Tuesday. So a little bit of a change here in the downstream forecast relative to what's going on right now. Again, it may regain hurricane status, but that's really academic. If it's a 70-mile-per-hour storm or a 75-mile-per-hour storm, there's hardly any difference between those two types of storms. Now, beyond that, we see it becoming a 50-mile-per-hour storm coming up across the Northeast, probably mainly a rain threat in those large cities in that Northeast corridor. And as we've seen for a while now, we had very strong winds in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere coming in and interrupting that circulation, and dry air also having an impact on the circulation. So that was why this low-level center spent a lot of the day today being completely exposed without thunderstorms firing around the center. And when that's the case, you tend to see weakening of tropical systems. But notice there is now a big blow-up of thunderstorms on the north side of that circulation. So that northern eye wall is trying to redevelop at this time, and if the storm can manage to fend off some of that shear and some of that dry air, well, it is possible that we'll see a re-strengthening of the circulation there, and we'll see a re-strengthening of the storm. And in fact, it is, as I mentioned, forecast to be a hurricane. Still got a lot of wind. No matter what happens, we're going to be getting wind along the coast. The question is just a matter of how much wind are we going to see. This European model forecast out this afternoon may provide some answers. It is showing that sort of bifurcated system where you've got on the east side of the circulation weather. I'm going to go back and put a just take this step by step here. So here it is approaching, going into early tomorrow morning. And you notice here, notice the structure of the storm. There's 5 o'clock tomorrow. There's the center of the circulation. And you've got thunderstorms on the north and east side of the circulation, but not much on the west side. So that would mean the worst of the weather is offshore. We'd be getting very gusty wind, yes, but probably more like tropical storm force wind rather than hurricane force wind in the absence of those taller storms right around the center. And so it may very well be that the structure that we're seeing right now is the structure that we continue to see as it moves up and along the coast. And so, you know, all the way around, this is not going to be as bad as we had feared, but still, Julie, a very formidable storm, and it may continue to be for quite some time yet. Over to you.
All right, continuing to follow those impacts, also following a severe weather threat in the mid-Atlantic and in the Northeast. In fact, here's our red zone. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings in Ohio, and we have a newly issued severe thunderstorm watch. This goes until 11 o'clock local time here. Does include Charleston up to Pittsburgh. So strong to severe storm development expected maybe later on tonight coming your way. And right now seeing a lot of lightning there in southeastern Ohio. Looking at our future radar, some of those storms really starting to bubble up and maybe grow in intensity as we get later on in the day and into the evening hours, perhaps reaching all the way into Philadelphia by the early morning hours past midnight there. So another rough night perhaps in the mid-Atlantic coming your way. Team coverage of Isaias continuing. Paul Goodlow in Florida next.
This is the weekend to stay home. This is the weekend that we stay with our families, we shelter in place. It's not for parties, just, you know, be safe, be careful, and certainly stay off the beach. And it's going to only get worse.
We also have thousands and thousands of utility workers that are just standing by up and down the East Coast.
72 million people in the cone of concern right now. Tropical storm, that's our tropical storm Isaias, still battering the Bahamas as we speak, while inching closer and closer to the east coast of Florida right now, where hurricane warnings, even tropical storm warnings are up right now. We've got live team coverage from the field, as well as expert analysis back at the Weather Channel headquarters with our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp, and meteorologist Alice Wilson. We're tracking tropical storm Isaias with special coverage right now on the Weather Channel. And thanks for staying with us for the Weather Channel. Extended coverage here all weekend long as we still have a threat here in the Atlantic. As of the 5 o'clock advisory, Hurricane Isaias has weakened now to tropical storm status. Doesn't mean we're out of the woods in terms of impacts here in Florida. We've been dealing with sustained winds well over 20 miles per hour for hours now, gusting 30 plus. In fact, even around 4 o'clock this morning, we had close to a 40 mile per hour wind gust. We'll talk more about what's going on here right now, but let's check in with the news conference with the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, live from Tallahassee.
It goes on and to regain hurricane status. So we see retensification, and we also see it threatening the east coast of Florida, as these tracks have said for the last day and a half. We will start seeing impacts from the storm tonight, and then obviously through tomorrow into tomorrow night, and perhaps beyond that. We now have 16 counties that have declared a state of emergency, 3 more since my update this morning. Broward, Nassau, St. John's, actually St. Lucie as well, have all declared states of emergency. We have had approval, of course, from the federal government for our Category B reimbursements. We have hurricane warnings in effect from Boca Raton to the Volusia-Flagler County line. And the National Hurricane Center is predicting storm surge of 2 to 4 feet potentially from Jupiter Inlet all the way up to Ponte Vedra Beach in northeast Florida. Palm Beach County has issued a voluntary evacuation order for Zone A for mobile homes, substandard homes, or homes in flood-prone areas. Those in this zone should listen to their local officials and seek shelter as appropriate. In addition to sending shelter kits with enough PPE for 10,000 Floridians, the Division of Emergency Management has pre-staged 1.8 million meals and deployed staff to county emergency operations centers in the storm's path to help orchestrate response efforts. To respond to power outages, the Department of Management Services activated its emergency telecommunications team. Utilities, including Florida Power and Light, have pre-positioned workers. FPL has nearly 10,000 workers deployed and ready to respond, including more than 6,500 line and vegetation personnel. They're deployed across 16 staging areas up and down the east coast of Florida. There have been some challenges getting out-of-state workers, but they're continuing to try to get even more resources and are going to work around the clock until every customer has the power back on. Even if it's tropical storm force winds, you can pretty much be assured you are going to see power outages. You know, that's certainly a 70-mile-an-hour wind will be enough to take down trees and limbs. That obviously interacts with power lines, and so that will happen, and people should be prepared for that. Now, FPL, other utilities have invested in a lot of infrastructure such as smart grid technology. You know, that allows them to restore power faster. You have concrete and steel poles and also undergrounding of lines. That means you repair the infrastructure without having to fully rebuild it, which means you can get the power back on quicker, and it does make a difference. If you can get the power on, hours is better than days, and days, of course, is better than weeks. Yesterday, I waived weight restrictions for fuel trucks to ensure fuel could move quickly into and throughout the state, and we're working with private sector partners to monitor fuel availability. At this time, there's no reports of shortages. The Agency for Healthcare Administration has made calls to critical healthcare facilities along the East Coast that are in a surge zone to make sure that they have everything they need. And as I mentioned previously, all nursing homes and assisted living facilities have a working generator on site, including the COVID-specific nursing homes that the state's been involved with setting up over the last few months. And the agency will continue to be in contact with these facilities to monitor the storm's impact. We don't have any indication there's going to be major movement of patients up and down the East Coast at this time. The Department of Health is also in close contact with special needs shelters should that become an issue. Department of Environmental Protection closed 22 parks and 8 campgrounds, completed pre-storm beach surveys, and has issued emergency orders to authorize repairs, replacement, restoration, and other measures necessary to respond to Isaias. Of course, the Florida National Guard is monitoring, and they're ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. And as I mentioned early this morning, Florida Highway Patrol and Fish and Wildlife are also both standing by in case of an emergency. So Floridians should be executing their plans, particularly if you're on the east coast of Florida, in the Palm Beach and north of there. You should have 7 days of food, water, and medicine. You very well may experience power outages, so just be prepared for that. Now, there are limited evacuation orders. As I mentioned, Palm Beach County has done a voluntary evacuation order. I think you probably won't see a huge number of those up and down the East Coast. And we, in the era of COVID, I think our guidance from the state has been, look, if it's a close call, err on the side of people just hunkering down rather than sending people on the road. But obviously, there does come a point if you're in an area and the storm is threatening and that decision is made, we ask you to follow it. For more information on Isaias, visit floridadisaster.org/info. We'll continue to monitor this, but don't be fooled by the downgrade. We do think it will be upgraded back to a hurricane later on this evening. With that, take a couple questions. All right, well, we will see you guys tomorrow with another
Governor
update.
Ron DeSantis of the state of Florida, briefing from the Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee, Florida, on the state's preparations for what is still forecast to re-strengthen to Hurricane Isaias, even though it has been designated currently a tropical storm. So it's been going through a lot of changes today, mostly for our benefit, a weaker, less organized system. But it's still pretty uncertain if it will make a comeback or if it will stay where it is or weaken. But you know, these systems that are kind of on the threshold between tropical storm and hurricane, and when they're struggling with the environment and some land interaction, they can surprise us. And so you need to keep tuned to what's going on with this all night long, because the impacts are going to be arriving in the state of Florida tonight. It's moving northwest at 10 miles an hour, moving slower than it had been yesterday, and certainly slower than when it was over the Caribbean. temperatures up only a little bit. So sometimes, even though systems weaken, they might get a little bit larger. So it's not always good news, completely 100% good news when it weakens. So the Air Force have been out there this afternoon, and they made one pass from northwest to southeast, and that was before that blow up of convection that they're flying through right now. So I would say it's pretty likely that the storm got weaker than 70 miles an hour this afternoon, but now getting farther away from Andros, maybe going to take advantage of the Gulf Stream waters, clear from land, and make a little bit of a comeback. So you can see how the winds on their first pass, not very impressive, but now they're going through this burst in the northeast side. Maybe the winds are getting back closer to that 70 miles an hour. And because the Hurricane Center is still forecasting this to re-strengthen to a hurricane, leaving the hurricane warnings up, the hurricane watch down south of Boca has been discontinued, but now we're farther along in time. Tropical storm watch has been issued up into South Carolina, gets up into the Charleston area, still got those inland tropical storm warnings. So again, you can see the exposed low-level swirl. Here's the wind shear and the dry air in the atmosphere, and it went over the largest island in the Bahamas. So a lot of things contributed to it losing some of its organization today. So it's down, but it's not out. So there's the open swirl. That's certainly not what you would associate with a hurricane or even a high-end tropical storm. But we're getting a burst here starting to regenerate. So maybe now it's back on the upswing, and the winds could very well be back up at that 70 miles an hour. So, you know, it probably got quite a bit weaker today, but now it's starting to make a comeback. And we've had some gusty showers here in these northwestern outer bands, and the winds will get stronger. And look at that. You can tell here, Paul, on the northern side of this system, it's starting to make a little bit of a comeback, a little lightning in that northern, you know, remnant of an eye wall. So I think the winds will still be pretty strong where you are. Later tonight, expect some power outages and some coastal impacts. Paul?
That's right, Dr. Knapp. They've been persistently gusty all day long. In fact, we had a pre-dawn kind of band come through here on 4 o'clock, give us 39-mile-per-hour wind gusts here at West Palm Beach Airport. And right now, we're still feeling wind gusts in 30s. We have the rain bands come in, even stronger winds as well. Here's what we know right now on the conditions of what's happening in this state of Florida. We have 25 Florida shelters that are receiving now personal protective equipment for 400 people sheltering for up to 96 hours. President Trump has approved Florida's request for an emergency declaration, and this storm is now putting the entire east coast of Florida on alert, but also it moves northward to Georgia, to South Carolina, North Carolina, even Virginia. North Carolina and Virginia now have declared state of emergencies, and one small hospital in Brevard County, Florida, has moved its COVID-19 patients ahead of the storm just to be on the safe side. Well, let's talk about the impacts we're going to have here across this part of Florida's coastline. Some people call it's also called the Treasure Coast as well, and it's a beautiful beach. We were seeing a few people out here. I saw some surfers out here earlier today, but the heavy squall bands of rain came through and kind of chased them off. Very agitated surf. You're watching us yesterday here. We were maybe a mile and a half up the road, and we saw 1 to 2 foot waves grow to 1 to 3 foot waves, and now we're easily seeing 4 to 5 to 6 foot plus waves out here. And as far as I can see on the horizon, I'm seeing white caps on these waves out here. So we had some, there's dozens upon dozens of turtle nests up and down these beaches here in Florida. I know some people are concerned. The good news is this part of Florida coast, we're expecting maybe a 1 to 3 foot storm surge, and some of those nests are even above that. So a lot of people are concerned about the nests being destroyed. Well, Mother Nature has a way to kind of look out for the turtles here. They typically nest above that surf line here, so hopefully they'll be intact. No, I think Stephanie Abrams got some video, might check out her Twitter page, of turtles hatching and making their way to the ocean earlier this morning. So we're still watching and waiting for more of these outer bands here. And like we were saying yesterday, the weather, it has been going downhill all day. It really goes downhill once we lose the sun tonight and all morning long on Sunday. And you can feel the raindrops hitting me right now. So we're going to have waves and waves of this as this thing is still trying to reorganize, but also it's slowing down. So we're going to have hours upon hours of tropical storm, if not hurricane conditions, as we head into much of the day on Sunday as well. Let's go back to the studio now with Dr. Rick Knapp.
Yeah, Paul, it's important for everybody to understand there's just not that much difference between a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane and a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm. I know that changes the perception. It can change at times what kinds of watches and warnings are up, but it doesn't really significantly change what the impacts will be, especially if you get the strong gust winds going right up the coast. And again, we've got a short amount of time in the southern end of our tropical storm and hurricane warning areas to get ready. And then up in northeast Florida, things will be going downhill as the day goes on tomorrow. So here's the updated complete cone here from the Hurricane Center. And again, they're forecasting it to go back up just slightly, but just enough to get back to hurricane. Now, doesn't mean that they're guaranteeing they know for sure how strong it'll be tonight and tomorrow, but it'll be teetering near that tropical storm hurricane threshold. It's not always going to look like a gorgeous hurricane with a well-defined eye on satellite, but don't discount it just because of the way it looks. And then it's going to be accelerating and headed northeastward, and we'll have a pretty potent tropical storm headed northeastward. The Florida part of the cone shows that relatively slow motion. It takes till Monday afternoon to get out of Florida, and then we've got several states in play going over North Carolina likely and up over the big cities. We're going to have some enhancement from the winds in the big cities between the buildings, and you're going to have some heavy rain and coastal issues. All the European model ensembles essentially stay on land over North Carolina and go over New England. Now let's take a look at the winds. Again, this is just a general idea if the European model's right, especially, but a lot of the models go right up along the coast there. So this is still kind of a weed eater kind of track where so many of you could get tropical storm force winds, and then look at things playing out here in South Carolina and North Carolina. Again, you got the tropical storm warning coming up through here, and it's just amazing how the storm seems to know where the coastline is. So we got to get ready for power outages, and you don't want to tape your windows, and I would shelter like you would for a tornado, Alex, because we've had too many people die in tropical storms and hurricanes when trees fall on their home or onto their car. And don't light candles, that causes a fire. Power outages can be surprisingly dangerous.
Yeah, we've got a lot of problems sometimes with these weaker storms that cause the power outages, and again, the trees into storms. And I use weaker, in quotations, because I think sometimes people think, oh, good, it's a tropical storm, but can still bring some gusty winds. And that's exactly what it looks like we're going to have for portions of the Carolinas. Some big rain and perhaps some big wind into portions of South and North Carolina, particularly there in the Outer Banks, as you saw from Dr. Knapp's forecast model. So Monday into Tuesday morning, that's going to be our timing for some of the biggest rainfall across sections of eastern North Carolina, eastern South Carolina, even parts of coastal Georgia. I think a place like Savannah could be looking at some big rain. And we know they call it the low country of South Carolina for a reason. It doesn't take much rain to cause flooding problems. So that official forecast track bringing us along the Carolinas. That storm will feel that weakness between the two high pressures. As Dr. Knapp said, just right up along the coast. We're back after this.
So I'm going to hold that way.
Better days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low 74. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday, partly cloudy. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday night, variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
I want to take a break from our tropical storm coverage to give you a look at some severe weather moving through sections of Ohio. We're in the western part of Ohio, west of Dayton. We're looking at portions of I-70, and this is going to include mile marker 17 there along I-70. Montgomery and Preble counties under a tornado warning. So what we've got is a radar indicated tornado. You can see right around Gratis, we've got that area of rotation. So that is the radar picking up on that possible tornado. So with this storm moving off towards the north and east, if you're in New Lebanon, if you're in Trotwood, if you're in Dayton or Huber Heights, want you to be in that lowest level, most interior room as that possible tornado is headed your way. And again, know somebody maybe traveling along I-70 right now? Give them a buzz. Let them know this is going to be passing through the area so they're able to pull over and wait for that to pass. We're going to monitor this. Want to get you back to Isaias right now with Dr. Nab.
Alex, we have the pleasure of talking now with the director of the National Hurricane Center, Ken Graham. Ken, it's good to see you. When I was in your shoes in that job, I always thought that the hardest storms to deal with were the ones that were right near that tropical storm hurricane threshold. They seem to be hard to forecast, and it's right on that threshold for the warnings.
Yeah, this one's been tough from the beginning, Dr. Nab. I mean, it's just really looking at the shear. We've had dry air, just the things working for the storm, against the storm. Anything right on the border like that is really tough. And I think we're trying to remind people, you know, the difference between the tropical storm and a hurricane is 1 mile an hour. So we're trying to keep people focused on these impacts. But yeah, it's been a tricky storm from the beginning.
Looks like it will be at least as close to the coast of Florida as Matthew was. Is it conceivable that the effects on the east coast of Florida could be, for some folks, just as bad if you take a storm a little closer than Matthew, maybe not as strong, but more of a direct hit?
Yeah, right along the coast. I mean, we're forecasting it to become a hurricane again overnight tonight. But yeah, right along the coast. And we always remind folks to, you know, just little teeny wiggles matter. Even if it's a small wind field with the strongest winds, just a small wobble could bring some of those high winds right on the actual coastline itself. So it wouldn't take much to really push that wind inland. And that's why we're keeping that, you know, the hurricane warning up just in case. So those high winds, we just can't let our guard down. Just a small change could bring those high winds right on the coastline. And that also brings some of the tropical storm force winds further inland as well.
Yeah, and can we talk all the time about how power outages can be surprisingly dangerous and sometimes deadly if people aren't careful. Now, it looks like we're going to have another North Carolina tropical cyclone impact. I know you talk with the Weather Prediction Center, our rainfall experts in the Weather Service. What's their level of concern for flooding in South Carolina, North Carolina, maybe even north of there?
Yeah, that's a conversation we were just having just a little bit ago, trying to look at the new rainfall map here. I mean, some of the yellow areas you can see, that's 4 to 6 inches of rain, even some higher amounts. And you have some terrain that can cause all sorts of problems. So, but through South Carolina, coastal South Carolina, North Carolina, up through Virginia, everybody's got to stay tuned. You know, these coastal systems, you know, even though they're right along the coast, the impacts could be so far inland. Everybody thinks of a hurricane or a tropical system as a coastal event. Well inland, you can see some of this flash flooding and this high rain, and that's water is the leading cause of fatalities in these tropical systems. Storm surge being first, inland flooding being next. So, you know, flooded roadways, you know, turn around, don't drown. We don't need to drive in our cars with this kind of dangerous situation. We just got to be prepared through the weekend and into next week.
And what would you and the emergency managers in the Northeast want to get across to folks in the big metropolitan areas who could be dealing with a pretty impactful tropical storm?
Yeah, the big message we've been trying to get out there is just watch for that rainfall. The gusty winds, rainfall, you start saturating the ground, wind on top of that, you can start knocking down trees and have some power issues as well. So it's just really trying to get everybody to get prepared and think about this with time. And it's, you know, this is going to be riding northward into the northeast U.S., but look at the rainfall totals and have some high winds on top of that. Just everybody has to be ready for some impacts. It's time to get your plan ready, and not just for this storm, but actually thinking about the entire season as we continue to be very busy.
Well, Ken Graham, director of the National Hurricane Center, thank you to all of you at the Hurricane Center, all the forecasters, all the emergency managers you're collaborating with, all the people who are flying the aircraft. Stay safe down there. Alex, we have another tornado warning you need to update us on.
Yeah, I got to tell you about that. Must be great to talk to him after, you know, you kind of been in his shoes, knowing the frustrations and the challenges they've got. Severe forecasters, they are watching these storms across Ohio very closely this evening. We've got Montgomery and Preble counties under a tornado warning. This is a radar indicated tornado warning, which means that the radar is picking up on rotation, and because of that, want you in that lowest level, most interior room. This does include portions of I-70. So as I said earlier, if you know somebody anybody who might be traveling along I-70, I'd give them a buzz and let them know that this is on the way. Farmersville, that storm really in your area right about now. You got 5 minutes, so lowest level, most interior room where you want to be. New Lebanon, then Trotwood, Huber Heights. So we're talking about the west side of Dayton, Ohio. Want to get you back to the beach. Our Paul Goodlow is in Palm Beach, Florida, tracking Isaias.
Yeah, we're seeing more rain come through right now, Alex. A very strong northeast wind, at times gusting well over 30 miles per hour. And the closer you are to the ocean, the stronger the winds will be. We'll have all the latest impacts expected here on the Florida coast coming up on this special coverage here on the Weather Channel, tracking Isaias.
Well, earlier today we had Hurricane Isaias blowing through the Bahamas. The storm knocked down trees, power lines, leaving many without power. You know, it was a far cry from last year's Hurricane Dorian. Of course, we remember that Category 5 storm stalling really for a day over portions of the Bahamas, and that led just to devastating effects there in portions of the northwest Bahamas. Now across the Florida states, one of Isaias' feeder bands rolled over the beach at Fort Lauderdale this afternoon. They kept the music going, right? But the rain was coming down heavy. We had big wind. You can see the palm trees blowing, and also rough surf. That gave a clear indication of, you know, what lies ahead tonight for areas along the coastline of Florida. It is just about 30 minutes past the hour. We welcome you back to our special coverage as we track now Tropical Storm Isaias. Don't get lulled into a false sense of security, though, because we do expect this to re-strengthen into a hurricane overnight tonight. So I don't want anybody to let their guard down, and we're going to break down that forecast in just a moment. But first, let's get you caught up on what's making headlines right now with the storm. 2 deaths blamed on Isaias, both in the Dominican Republic. A 5-year-old was killed when a tree fell on him, and a man was electrocuted. Now, both fatalities occurred Thursday night. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says despite Isaias weakening to a tropical storm, residents should still expect power outages. And the SpaceX astronauts, they're going to return in the Gulf of Mexico tomorrow. A very wise decision. Their splashdown moved from Florida's east coast due to that storm. Tropical storm now, but again, as we mentioned, Dr. Knapp, don't want anybody to think, okay, so nothing to worry about here. We saw a death in the Dominican Republic because of falling trees. Tropical storm force winds still enough to take down trees, and we think this could strengthen back to a hurricane. Yeah, don't think that can't happen here in the United States, too. It's happened before. In most tropical storms and hurricanes, we get at least one fatality, if not multiple, from wind. And sometimes that's fallen trees. Sometimes it's indirect effects with the power outages and so forth. So we got to take this seriously. Now, Isaias is down, but it's not out. And even earlier this afternoon, I'm pretty sure the max winds were even below 70 miles an hour, probably by a lot. But it's making a comeback, and you can see that blow up of convection there. It's not a big comeback, but it is getting over the warm waters of the Gulf Stream here. And it's moving relatively slowly now. We expected that, and that's not a good thing because that just lengthens the duration of the event of the winds and the rain. So here's the southeast coast of Florida. Here is Nassau in the Bahamas, and here's the largest island in all the Bahamas, and Isaias went right over it. So that, with some dry air and wind shear, contributed to its weakening today. But you can see that blow up of storms just to the north of the center there, east of Bimini and south of Grand Bahama. If you look on the radar depiction of this, there's even some lightning there. So that is its attempt to reconstitute itself, and this is probably where you've got maximum sustained winds that might be getting closer to that 70 miles an hour again. We've also had some gusty winds here on the southeast coast of Florida. Not too bad right now in Miami-Dade County. The winds at International Airport very weak, gusting to 25 at Opelika. And let's go up to Broward County. You've occasionally gusted, you know, in the 30, 40 mile an hour range, gusting to 25 at Fort Lauderdale Executive. Pompano Beach gusting near 30, and then Palm Beach County also got some squalls coming in. Gust recently to 37 miles an hour at West Palm Beach, 35 at Boca Raton, and this is just the outer band of it. So we've got tropical storm warnings even for inland areas. The tropical storm watch has been extended up into South Carolina, and as Ken Graham from the Hurricane Center just told me a few minutes ago, keeping up that hurricane warning just in case. You got a borderline storm here near that hurricane threshold. Late tonight is when those winds will start arriving, and you got some chances of strong winds up in North Carolina as well as into New England, Alex. So a lot of folks are going to get some strong wind out of this. Yeah, all right. already, across South Florida's coast, we've seen those gusty showers as Isaias approaches. Paul Goodlow is spending the day in Palm Beach. Paul, what have been the big changes you've noticed today?
It's got to be the humidity, Alex, because the dew point now is in the upper 70s, 78, 77 degrees, when it was 72, 73. Now, don't get me wrong. Both is horribly oppressive humidity there, but when you get to that 78, 77, 79 dew point, this is truly a tropical air mass being slammed on shore now ahead of Isaias, and that's what the big difference has been. It was a hot day, temperatures in the low 90s here, but that humidity jumping up was also coming in with those rain bands. Humidity hasn't dropped at all, but that's what we're dealing with. Again, South Florida, the closest we have here in the U.S. to being in the tropics, but we're going to have impacts from Isaias, whether it's a tropical storm or a hurricane. Impacts are not going to change that much at all. And the closer you are to a body of water, the stronger the winds will be. So again, from the intercoastal to even Lake Okeechobee, which is not too far inland, you're going to have that wind pushing that water, whether it's from the intercoastal, the ocean, or Lake Okeechobee, onto the far side. So be weather aware. Coastal flooding, even lake flooding, is going to be an issue as we have the approach of Isaias.
Okay, every communities.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of now Tropical Storm Isaias. You are watching the Weather Channel on a Saturday afternoon. It's been rather nice in places like Bay Head, New Jersey. Myrtle Beach, you've seen the increase in clouds, still dry. In Washington, D.C., a pretty calm afternoon, hot. Temperatures in the upper 80s across the mid-Atlantic. Now, local leaders across some of these areas are urging residents to take all necessary precautions to prepare for this storm, because guess what? It's headed to all those locations. Now, New Hanover County, which includes Wilmington, North Carolina, they got a capacity of 200 at shelters. So we've lowered the amount of people, hanging out at those shelters because of our ongoing pandemic, too. If it's not one thing, it's another, right? And I know this tropical storm going to kind of throw a kink into our plans, but if you're smart about it, this is very manageable. Think of places you could go maybe to hang out with a friend or a neighbor, so that way you're preventing the amount of, not a neighbor, I guess, a friend or family member that lives out of town. That way you're preventing being in those big common areas. Rainfall totals from parts of the Carolinas all the way up to the mid-Atlantic could be in that 3 to 5 inch range. So I'd be concerned about the potential for some flash flooding or river flooding issues with all that rain coming down during the early part of our week. So Monday into Tuesday going to really be our time frame across sections of North and South Carolina, up into Virginia as well. Where you see that darker shade of green, that's where we've got the better chance of some flash flooding problems for our start of the week. How about Charleston, South Carolina? In addition to the rain coming down, we got to talk about the tide, because that can exacerbate the flooding problems. We've got Sunday at 8:14 p.m. high tide, but we're going to be watching that Monday morning high tide. I think in particular, wave heights are also going to be going up along those beaches as this storm tracks right up along the coast. Take a look. Charleston going to be a soggy start to the week. By Tuesday lunchtime, Raleigh could be looking at some really heavy rain showers and some gusty winds out of this. Our wind speed forecast, strongest winds likely staying off the coast of, say, Georgia, but could be looking at some strong winds on the order of 35 to 45 mile-an-hour gusts across sections of eastern North Carolina. Want to take it back to South Carolina. Joining us on the phone from Charleston, South Carolina, is Emergency Management Director Shannon Scaff. Shannon, good to talk to you again. I guess the last time we talked was during Dorian. Obviously, flooding was a problem in that one. How is Charleston preparing for the threat of flooding this go around?
Yeah, anytime we hear anything like 3 to 5 inches of rainfall, whether it's a hurricane or not, that's going to pique our attention. So we've got some resources on standby, the typical barricades or road closures. Our incident management team has been partially activated for this. So we're definitely taking this seriously, as we would for any major rain event.
And in terms of the pandemic, maybe that has helped people in making sure that they've had the resources they need. Have you seen a real rush for, things that people would need if they're going to be staying in their home for a few days?
Well, I tell you, we put actually about 3 months ago, we put a hurricane task force together as we were really rolling into this COVID-19 crisis to focus on that very thing. So every time we've talked to the media and the public about COVID, we've tried to bring in the hurricane discussion as well. So we've really been urging folks for months now to be prepared for this. The city of Charleston has put together a task of about 90,000 masks. So obviously keeping the safety of our own employees has been job one here. We're going to have them in the incident management team working, but it's all about masks, hand sanitizing, social distancing, the things that we've been hearing for months now.
Absolutely. And knowing that there is the potential for power outages, we've heard from some other areas that power restoration may take a little bit longer because of the pandemic and the guidelines that go into play for the crews. Would that be something that Charleston residents, people in the Low Country, would have to be aware of as well?
Yeah, I think 2020 begs for us to have a bit of patience. It's definitely been a challenging year, and certainly when it comes to a response and recovery from an incident like this, it may take a little bit more time. I think we all understand that. I think really at this point, what I want to do is just urge folks to stay inside, to not venture out onto the streets to see the conditions. We tend to have some lower lying areas in Charleston that are very sensitive to extreme levels of rainfall, and we're just going to want folks to really stay inside for this deal.
Yeah, great information, I think, for a lot of us. So we've got what we need at home. We've got a lot of supplies, so stay in and stay safe. Shannon Scaff, thank you so much for joining us there from Charleston, South Carolina. Dr. Knabb, we got to go way up the coast then. We've got other areas to watch in the Northeast.
Yeah, we sure do. It's all the way from the Carolinas all the way up. And, we're starting with a potential landfall in South Carolina and North Carolina when we get into early Tuesday, and then a potent tropical storm, a windy one, a rain-making one, and it could be a significant event. And since Alex has talked about the flood risk and that gentleman that she talked to also concerned about that, I wanted to highlight again how significant of an inland flood event we could be dealing with, not just in South Carolina and North Carolina, but also in places like Virginia, some of the big cities of the Northeast. It could be a very, very significant flood event, and we've got to be thinking all the way at the East Coast not to drive our car onto any water-covered road, don't drive around any barricades, don't let the kids play in it, and it's at least possible in places like North Carolina. You've seen this before. If water were to get into structures, you don't want to drive away from your home to try to escape the flood. You go to the highest level of your home and you call 911. Alex and I will be back in a moment, and we'll go back to Paul Goodlow in Florida.
Experience the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low 74. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday, partly cloudy. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Winds southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Sunday night, variable clouds with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to our coverage of tracking Isaias, which is now a tropical storm, but forecast to become a hurricane once again and re-strengthen. Right now we're seeing a little bit of blue sky. The rain has stopped temporarily, but it's just temporarily. We still have Isaias coming this way. You can see a very angry Atlantic here, but also off behind me, that's the Lake Worth Pier. You can see the way it's crashing well out of the pier, but if you follow this line, but past me, past the edge of that pier, about 110 miles, we get to that northern eye wall of Tropical Storm Isaias. Has a well-defined center there. We can actually see that on the radar, and the actual center of the storm is about 140 miles from where we're standing here on in Palm Beach here. So that continues to come this way at the speed that it's moving right now, and maybe even getting slower as we head over the next 10 to maybe 16 hours, we'll have the closest approach and then eventually pass, hopefully still offshore of the center of Isaias, as it eventually kind of parallels the coastline and then moves on towards the Carolinas. But right now, we're still feeling very juicy air. Dew points in the upper 70, 77, 78 degree dew point. This is a straight tropical air mass we're dealing with, even more humid than earlier this morning before we got that push of that tropical moisture from Isaias. I want to go bring back in Dr. Rick Knabb back in the lab. And Dr. Knabb, we can clearly see that center coming off of Andros right now. So we do expect this to strengthen back to a hurricane pretty quickly.
It could, because it's so close in terms of what the Hurricane Center has assigned its intensity. But it's going to be a strong tropical storm or a borderline hurricane, and it could have some ups and downs. It might not look all that pretty, but it doesn't make a whole lot of difference exactly where it ends up being in terms of its intensity. As long as it's in that strong tropical storm to hurricane threshold range, because that's going to all have a similar impact in terms of, mainly for most of you, tropical storm conditions on the east coast of Florida. Somebody might get hurricane conditions somewhere in that hurricane warning area. And then we've got a big rainfall problem farther up the east coast of the U.S. Now, here's the way it looks on satellite. It definitely has been struggling with some shear and some dry air and going over the largest island in the Bahamas. So it still has an exposed center right here, but there has been a sizable resurgence of convection on the north side. So even if it likely got below 70 miles an hour a little while ago before this convection started to refire, but maybe it's making its way back up into that range and got a nice blow up of lightning there. This, I guess, would be the northern remnant of what used to be an eye wall. Got some gusty winds and occasional heavy rains coming into southeastern Florida. Sustained tropical storm force winds starting sometime overnight tonight or early tomorrow, and then northeastern Florida by tomorrow night. Again, here's the new track and intensity forecast. High confidence that it's going up the entire East Coast. Millions of you are going to feel the effects of this from wind, water, or both. Hurricane Center's forecasting it to maybe get right back to that hurricane threshold, but then we're looking at tropical storm being the most likely scenario for going along northern Florida and the rest of the East Coast, including a pretty potent tropical storm for the big cities of the Northeast. Tropical storms can cause a lot of problems, including power outages. And I want to emphasize how surprisingly dangerous and sometimes deadly power outages can be. Don't operate those generators inside or in your garage or on a porch or near a window. Get it away from the building outside. Don't use open candles or an open flame. Stay away from down power lines. And Alex, during the pandemic, especially with our elderly friends having even a harder time than usual, you want to help people who are vulnerable to shelter someplace where they have backup power if they have life-sustaining medical equipment. People have died in power outages because their machine didn't work anymore. It needed to keep them alive.
Yeah, check in on your neighbors, any relatives you have who may live in some of these areas, and just say, hey, do you need anything? Do you want to come stay with me? Have a safe spot in your house to keep them away. All right. So a lot of people have been asking questions, and in true spirit of the Weather Channel, what better place to take your questions than to a hurricane expert, right? We're going to throw a couple at Dr. Knabb, starting with this one coming to us courtesy of Twitter using the hashtag Hurricane Questions. If you live on the 15th floor, 4 blocks from the beach, can the winds be stronger?
Absolutely. In fact, if you go 15, 20, or especially like 25 stories up, you could get a category stronger. So if it were to come ashore as a Cat 1 in that area, you could be getting Cat 2 up at the 20 or 25th floor. 15th floor would be close to that. So you want to stay away from those windows in those high rises. And, especially in areas where there's a lot of buildings, there can be funneling between the buildings. So it could be really, really windy on those high rises, even in tropical storm conditions. So that's one example of a place that can be dangerous, upper floors of a high rise. But mobile home also, even in tropical storm conditions, mobile homes can be damaged or obliterated. And also, Alex, I don't want to see anybody taping windows. It doesn't do any good.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can keep sending us your questions. I know somebody's asking about if their golf plans are going to be affected, so we're going to tackle those.
Depends on where you're playing golf.
Yeah, absolutely. South Florida. Yeah, it could be a tough one. We've got much more coming your way. We'll check back in with Paul Goodlow after this.
This is the weekend to stay home. This is the weekend that we stay with our families, we shelter in place. It's not for parties. Just, be safe, be careful, and certainly stay off the beach. And it's going to only get worse.
We also have thousands and thousands of utility workers that are just standing by up and down the East Coast.
A little glimpse of what Isaias has brought to the state of Florida and the East Coast already. 77 million people right now in the cone of concern. Tropical storm Isaias still battering the Bahamas as we speak, while inching closer and closer to the East Coast of Florida. Now we have live coverage from the field and expert analysis back in our headquarters with Dr. Rick Knapp, our hurricane expert, and meteorologist Alex Wilson as well. We're tracking Tropical Storm Isaias with special coverage right now on the Weather Channel. And thanks for staying with us. We're here all weekend long and into next week. As long as Isaias is still a threat and impact in the U.S., we'll be here bringing you live coverage here in the Weather Channel. Right now, I had to take my jacket off because you see behind me there's some blue sky out here. And it's not just that. We don't have the sun beating down at us, but the dew point, the measure of moisture, humidity, it's 78 degrees. It is a rare day you get the dew point that high in South Florida, but we have one now because of the approach of Isaias. It might have been downgraded just to a tropical storm by 5 miles per hour, but it's still bringing a lot of impacts, including hurricane impacts, to the east coast of Florida, mainly here at the coast. Huge waves have been crashing on shore. We do expect a slight water rise, at least here in Palm Beach County. Farther north, we could see perhaps an even bigger storm surge. Right now, the watch is about 1 to 3 feet here in Palm Beach County and areas southward on towards Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, even the Miami Beach area as well. But farther north, because Isaias might not make landfall, but it's going to come pretty close. We're going to have a lot of impacts well north of this area, even up towards northern Florida, and then the potential landfall maybe in the Carolinas as we head over the next 2 to 3 days. So we're not done by far in terms of impacts. We'll talk more about what's going on here across South Florida, but let's go back to the lab now and bring in Dr. Rick Knapp. And Dr. Knapp, again, 5 miles per hour doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of impacts we're still going to have, not only here in Florida, but eventually even up into the rest of the southeastern U.S.
Yeah, Paul, I think the bottom line is we're going to have a system that's going to be near that tropical storm hurricane threshold. And even if it's not at the hurricane threshold, doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Strong tropical storms can bring a lot of wind, can bring a lot of flooding rains, can take out the power, can cause coastal issues and erosion. And this will be affecting nearly the entire east coast of the U.S. as a pretty potent storm. So it doesn't have to be a hurricane to cause problems and to take lives. Now, earlier this afternoon, I'm pretty sure the max winds were a good bit below 70 miles an hour when it didn't have that blow up of convection that you see there recently, but it's trying to make a comeback now over the Florida Straits and headed over the Gulf Stream. So with the Hurricane Center still forecasting re-intensification just a little bit back to hurricane, as Ken Graham, Director of Hurricane Center, told us last hour, keeping up that hurricane warning just in case. Hurricane watch down into Broward County is discontinued, but we do have now tropical storm watches extended up into South Carolina, and I'm sure those will be extended even farther to the north. Now, Air Force hurricane hunters have been out there during the last hour. They got winds that might be up in the 60s there for the surface winds. It's really difficult in this kind of setup with the Bahamas to get accurate readings from this instrument. But, it's a solid tropical storm, no doubt about that. But it is struggling. It's got some shear. It's got some dry air. Went over the largest island in the Bahamas with Andros. But this is a sizable and potent blow-up of thunderstorms there on the northern side of the center, getting a lot of lightning in there. So it's trying to reinvigorate itself. And we've got some fairly potent bands coming in well to the northwest. Got a special marine warning up in here near Fort Pierce at Port St. Lucie. Could have some water spouts, could have gusts to 40 miles an hour in that band. And wait till something like this gets close to land. Then we're going to really be rocking and rolling with some strong winds. Winds, sustained tropical storm force. If they arrive on the coast here in Palm Beach County, it'd be late tonight, early tomorrow morning, and then later in the night, and then into tomorrow, the farther you go up the east coast. When you get up into South Carolina, we're talking Monday, but you already got the watch up. So here we are on Saturday, a couple days out. So that's why we're in that 48-hour time frame for the watch to be issued. Again, high confidence it goes over North Carolina, and high confidence it goes over New England. and a lot of the big cities will be directly impacted, even if the center doesn't go right over you. Be a large, sprawling tropical storm. Again, relatively slow motion near that hurricane tropical storm threshold over the next couple of days. You get 2 days from now, we're clear in Florida, and then a slowly weakening system, but speeding up in terms of its forward speed as we go through Tuesday into Wednesday before it leaves Maine. And again, look at all these European model tracks. There's only a couple that miss New England. All of them go over North Carolina. So very high confidence again that this is going to affect a lot of land areas. And look at these relatively high chances they're increasing of winds of tropical storm force along the entire east coast of the U.S. So we've got a lot of people, starting with Florida, that could lose power and that could be dealing with some downed trees and a little bit of damage, Paul. So tropical storms can mean some business, can be very dangerous if people tune out, which we certainly hope they do not.
It's certainly impressive watching that cone, Dr. Knabb. Maybe within 50, 100 miles of I-95, you could have impacts from Isaias as we head into next week. Amazing. All right, here's what we know right now with Isaias. Right now, 25 Florida shelters will receive kits including personal protective equipment, or PPE, for 400 people sheltering for up to 96 hours. The president has approved Florida's request for an emergency declaration. At least 16 Florida counties have been declared states of emergency, and about 10,000 Florida utility workers are pre-staging to repair potential power outages. And our hotel last night in West Palm Beach, there were just scores and upon scores of utility workers, electrical workers checking into that hotel. So we have witnessed it firsthand. We got tons and tons of men and women prepared to repair any power outages that will most likely happen as we have the approach over the next, say, 36 hours of Isaias here in the state of Florida. Well, let's talk about this state, because once again, Florida is being threatened with an I-named storm. Last time was Irma. We had impacts here, even though it hit in the Keys and Southwest Florida. Let's bring in Jared Moskowitz, Director of Florida Emergency Management. He joins us on the phone this evening from Tallahassee. Thanks for joining us this evening. And let's talk about this, because I'm thinking your blood pressure must have changed the last couple of days from potential landfall to perhaps a near miss in terms of impacts and what you could be dealing with here in the state of Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, thank you for the opportunity. No, this is fitting, of course, to have a storm that is a little bipolar here, especially with everything that's going on the last 4 months. But no, my blood pressure can't go any higher. It's been pretty elevated since March. But listen, residents are prepared. I mean, you're talking about Floridians who have dealt with Hermine, Matthew, Irma, Michael, and almost Dorian. And so they're heeding the warnings, they're paying attention, they're watching the updates as the track and the intensity continues to change.
So this is the first time you've been threatened since the pandemic began here, and I know you guys are preparing as much as you can. So what is going right in your preparations now where you have a potential of impact with a tropical storm / hurricane?
Well, one of the things that's going very well at the moment, it's something that's new, is the non-congregate shelters. And so, obviously, we got the EM deck from the president, and we've been working since March on this with FEMA, and that's the hotels that we've brought online to add to the shelter capability at counties. And so, in fact, in Palm Beach County, for instance, they have over 200 hotel rooms that we have secured for them, and they are diverting people who might fail screening, a temperature check, or who is COVID positive but need to be sheltered. And so far, that's working extremely well, and then we want to thank FEMA for their partnership, as that is now an eligible activity.
And that's the good. So what about the bad? What's not going right, or what are you learning from just these last couple of days?
Well, I think what we're going to learn, obviously, is people's behavior, whether they evacuate, if they are in a voluntary evacuation area. So like, take Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County issued, as it's been mentioned, a voluntary evacuation for Zone A, unsafe structures and mobile homes. So, we want to find out, obviously, if people do go. We want to find out if they go to a shelter. We want to find out if they were given the PPE kits that we've sent. We've recommended masks be mandatory in all of these shelters. So, right now everything's going right. I mean, the one thing that's always of great concern with these storms, that one day is a tropical storm, one day is a hurricane, one day it's to the east, one day it's to the west, is that in disaster communications, you only get so many opportunities for people to absorb the information. So, especially with everyone being obviously having disaster fatigue over the last 4 months. So we want to make sure people are paying attention. We don't want people to think like, oh, it turned out to sea, this thing has changed, it's moving a little further to the west, it is re-strengthening. So we want people to obviously heed the warnings, listen to their locals, and be prepared.
Great information. Jared Moskowitz, Director of Florida Emergency Management, thanks for joining us with that information. Best luck to you and the men and women here in Florida doing great work trying to get people prepared and also stay safe from Isaias. I want to go back to the lab now with Dr. Knabb. And, Dr. Knabb, we're seeing, a break in the rain, seeing some blue sky. That's the big concern. People think, oh, hey, it's not a big deal. And perhaps disregard still a lurking tropical storm that could be strengthening back to a hurricane in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, and Paul, there's two big concerns that I have that could really catch people by surprise if they don't take this seriously. One is winds could be stronger than you think and cause more problems than you think and be dangerous or even life-threatening. And then the heavy rainfall that's going to occur. And sometimes they work together to cause problems because the more rain you have, the more flooding, the weaker the soil, the easier the trees come down. So looking at the track and intensity forecast, don't just pay attention, oh, it's a tropical storm, I'm not that concerned about it. When you get up in here into the Carolinas, you're going to be dealing with something that probably didn't spend a lot of time over land in Florida. So it's going to maintain a lot of its strength and its ability to drop a lot of rainfall. And Alex is going to go in depth on where the flooding is a big concern. I wanted to highlight that the heavy rainfall from the individual models is still kicking out half a foot in many, many places, South Carolina, North Carolina, up into Virginia, a lot of the big cities of the Northeast, and they're getting more consistent in that. Okay, so when you add rainfall to what we had already this year, it makes the soil even weaker, and we could have a lot of downed trees. And there are things you can be doing to get ready for flooding. You can fill sandbags, you can clear your gutters, you can put valuables in a waterproof container, you can raise electronics off the floor, document what's going on inside your home in case there's an insurance claim, and back up your computer data. I mean, these are all things you can be doing now, and you want to do it before the winds become a problem, because when power goes out, those things are a little bit more difficult to deal with. And the chances of sustained winds of tropical storm force are very high on most places on the east coast of Florida, and they are increasing along the rest of the east coast. So this is going to be surprisingly impactful for a lot of folks. And for power outages, Alex, you don't want to operate those generators indoors. You don't want to use candles indoors that can start a fire. Stay away from power lines, and we've got to keep talking about helping out the elderly who have life-sustaining medical equipment. Last couple of days, I've been reading the reports of recent tropical storms and hurricanes in the southeast. Trees coming down on homes, people losing their medical equipment, power. These are things that kill people.
Absolutely, and these are things that don't rely on a storm being a hurricane to be problems. It can be a tropical storm. Heck, it can be a tropical depression where we see problems like that. So great advice. Again, think of your, your elderly neighbors, your relatives. Just call them up, make sure everybody's doing okay. And of course, I always like to remind you to remember your pets too. Bring them in. Make sure they've got a safe space to shelter through these storms as well. Now we look beyond Florida. What's next? Well, really the rest of the U.S. East Coast has to prepare for the storm. South Carolina, you'll start feeling the wind Sunday late in the day, and we could see flooding along those low spots. Charleston is the low country, right? Officials in North Carolina's Outer Banks, they've already gone ahead and ordered an evacuation of residents and visitors in Ocracoke. That goes into effect in the morning. A decision about the northern Outer Banks, that's expected tomorrow. Now, up in New Jersey, there's concern that the full moon on Tuesday could actually coincide with Isaias, increasing potential erosion along the beaches there. In Belmar, though, it's been a beautiful day. Look at the blue sky up there. Things are changing. And I know the Jersey Shore, it's such a huge destination for people up there in the Northeast. So this storm could throw a little bit of a kink into your plans for the early mid part of the week. We look at our rain totals that are forecast across the area. Anywhere in that yellow color that stretches from South Carolina up to the mid-Atlantic, even parts of North Jersey, that's a 3 to 5 inch range. And that's that range that we could get into seeing some flash flooding problems, even perhaps some river flooding problems moving forward. But there's our flash flood danger Monday Monday into early Tuesday. We've got a good chunk of North Carolina, South Central Virginia, eastern South Carolina, even coastal sections of Georgia. Areas like Savannah could see some flash flooding problems. So again, the closer you get to the coast across the Carolinas and Georgia, lower elevations could see some flash flooding problems. There's our official forecast track, and our steering involves our high pressure to the east of the storm and to the west of the storm, but there's a weakness between those two areas of high pressure, so going to allow it to pass through. We've also got this dip in the jet stream that's going to help to steer that storm almost perfectly, like right along the coast. It's as if the coast was shaped for it, right? Almost interior sections of the I-95 corridor right up into New England. Rain and thunderstorms likely across the middle of the country, so southeast to the mid-Atlantic Monday. By Tuesday, mid-Atlantic, southern sections of the Northeast really seeing some of the heaviest rain. And then by Wednesday, we're looking at that storm working up into New England. European model rainfall totals, we could see a half foot of rain all the way up into portions of Maine. So, Paul, this is something that we're going to be watching up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, for sure. And also definitely watching here in Florida. I was just talking to a coastal program manager about the sea turtles. He told me some surprising, some shocking, and even some disappointing news about what could happen to some of these nests here. We're going to fill you in on what he said and told me coming up as our coverage of ECS continues all day here on the Weather Channel.
Their days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low 74. Winds southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, intervals of clouds and sunshine. A stray afternoon or evening thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, variably cloudy with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 40%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to our coverage of tracking ECS. I'm meteorologist Paul Gerther live in Palm Beach, Florida, here on the coast. And you might see turtle nests here. We have tons of them here. This is one stake marking a nest. And I just talked to Rob, the program manager here for the town, and he said typical season just here, the town of Palm Beach, 7,000 turtles come ashore to nest. 7,000 just here in town. And he said about 3,000 have already hatched, so there's still 4,000 turtle nests on the beach here. They definitely are concerned with the approach of hurricane or tropical storm Isaias in terms of losing some of these. He expects maybe about 2,000 of the remaining 4,000 nests could be lost to the surf and the waves. I said, hey, what about moving them? People on Twitter say, why don't you move them? They can't. Once they're in the ground, they're in the ground at the just at the mercy of Mother Nature here. And it could be 4 species. It could be the rare hawk's bill, but most likely loggerhead, leatherback, or a green sea turtles. Again, still 4,000 sea turtle nests here, which could be victims of the surf, which is pretty angry right now. Easily 4 to 5 to maybe even 6+ foot waves here, which have been lashing the coastline, will only increase as that storm gets closer and closer. Again, ECE is now a tropical storm, but a very strong tropical storm forecasted coming hurricane again will be increasing the wave action here. Our storm surge forecast is about 1 to 3 feet. So that is enough with the wave action to threaten a lot of these sea turtle nests, which are still here on the beach, at least in this part of Palm Beach. But remember, there are plenty of nests farther north and south also at risk for the wave action here because of ECS.
Yeah, now,
Alex?
Paul, you've mentioned that they dig them fairly deep. You know, obviously, these are animals that have evolved to understand, you know, the risk. Do the officials there think that it's going to be a big, widespread problem?
Well, this is kind of late in their season, so as we already had 3,000 of the 7,000 nests hatch. And, you know, it all depends on exactly how far away from the surf line these turtles have nested. He says some do it pretty close, some come, you know, several feet farther on shore. Those would be safer than the ones here, and it's all depending on the duration of the wave action eating away at the beaches. You got to remember, beaches are like barrier islands. They're transitional. They are constantly moving, constantly changing. And so this is, yeah, most of the sea turtles are endangered. It'd be sad to lose 2,000 nests, but it's also the bright side. You know that it's just how Mother Nature deals with it, and we still have 5,000 nests that it will still be successful. So I think Mother Nature eventually kind of evens things out. It's just, you know, turtles also at the mercy of Mother Nature, just like us humans are as well.
Yeah, we
Alex?
talk about all of the effects. Paul, great information. My grandmother-in-law does, she's really involved with sea turtles down there in Florida, on the west coast of Florida. So, you know, a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into making sure these are successful. So I know we'll be rooting for those. We'll be watching that story for you if you're an animal lover like me. Severe thunderstorm watch. Let's get you up into the mid-Atlantic, really the Ohio Valley, portions of Ohio, a little bit of Kentucky, southwest PA, and a good chunk of West Virginia. So this does include Charleston, Kanawha County, down the West Virginia Turnpike. Looks like it just quite makes it to Beckley, Bluefield. Bluefield and Beckley not included within this. Neither is Lewisburg, but we've got plenty of areas there in West Virginia, including Huntington, Charleston, Morgantown, a lot of populated areas that are watching for the threat. Parkersburg, we saw some strong storms in your area, even a tornado warning on the Ohio side of things earlier. At this point, a lot of thunderstorms, nothing severe warned, but we know we've got an environment that's favorable for severe thunderstorm development. So we'll be watching for those storms that could produce some damaging winds, some hail. We've seen tornado warnings. I'm not looking at a huge tornado threat, but know that possibility for a warning is there. We'll be watching southwest PA. We're already seeing some storm action there moving into the evening. And then by tomorrow, we're watching, say, the 81 corridor across sections of eastern Pennsylvania up to central New York, getting over into western Vermont, western sections of Massachusetts, even western Connecticut for that greatest severe threat. And, you know, the storms tomorrow will be ahead then of some wet weather courtesy of Isaias up there in the Northeast.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that's not good news is this table setting rains to make them even more vulnerable to flooding from the rains of our tropical storm. So not a good next few days in the Northeast. Let's take a look at the northern part of the track. It's going to be Tuesday into Wednesday when it goes over Hampton Roads and over the big cities of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast and over New England before departing later in the day on Wednesday. And the confidence is really high. Look at all the European tracks. Very few of them bend off before going over New England. So you can almost count on this coming your way. Increasing chances of winds of tropical storm force. The chances are nearly the same any spot along the coast north of North Carolina, and those chances will be going up. Just watch the trends, and you know it's going to start with North Carolina when you get into Monday. The watches aren't that far north yet, and because of the rains we're having over the next couple of days, these rains that the European model is churning out, 5 to 8 inches of rain in some localized spots in many areas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, DC, Baltimore, up into New York City. And then you go even farther north than that, way up into New England, we could have some flooding rains. So turn around, don't drown is going to be a very, very important cliche to live by over the next few days in the Northeast.
When was the last?
Skin loves.
So Floridians should be executing their plans, particularly if you're on the east coast of Florida, in the Palm Beach and north of there. You should have 7 days of food, water, and medicine. You very well may experience power outages, so just be prepared for that.
You know, one of the positives, I think, in preparing for our ongoing pandemic is that a lot of us have had some extra supplies, at least more than we normally would. And we're getting a new video into the Weather Channel, this out of West Palm Beach, Florida. Winds gusting as high as 35 miles per hour today, and the rain coming along with it. So gusty showers have been the norm. We are approaching 30 minutes past the hour. We welcome you back to our special coverage as we track Isaias, now a tropical storm, but expected to strengthen back into a hurricane. So I don't want you to, look at semantics. We could still be looking at some wind that leads to downed trees, leads to power outages, and big rain expected across and along the coast. We're talking Florida all the way up into New England. So let's get you caught up on what's making headlines right now with this storm. 2 deaths are being blamed on Isaias, both in the Dominican Republic. A 5-year-old boy was killed, or a 5-year-old was killed when a tree fell on him, and a man was electrocuted in the storm. Both fatalities occurred on Thursday night. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says despite Isaias weakening to a tropical storm, residents should still expect power outages in his state. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says we all need to be prepared for the dangers Isaias could bring, and he wants you to go to ncdps.gov/Isaias. That's ISAIAS for information there in that state. Dr. Nab, you've been watching this closely. I think the classification from hurricane to tropical storm was expected, as this thing has really been struggling throughout the day, but there are a few things that are going to work in its favor here in the coming hours.
That's over the Gulf Stream, the warm waters. There's been some resurgence of the convection north of the center, so it's not dead yet, okay? And it's probably not going to be for quite a while. It's down, but it's not out. And it's still going to have wind and water impacts, at least tropical storm conditions for a lot of people along a huge stretch of the east coast of the U.S., Florida being first. 70-mile-an-hour winds. Now, earlier this afternoon, I'm pretty sure those winds were not that strong. And with the recent aircraft data, it's not 100% sure they are that strong right now. But still, it's a solid tropical storm and forecast to re-strengthen. So plan on dealing with something that's near that tropical storm hurricane threshold, and a few miles an hour here or there aren't going to make a whole lot of difference in terms of the impacts. And we could very likely see some power outages along the east coast of Florida, and then in a lot of places farther north than that. There's that blowup of convection on the north side here near Bimini and south of Freeport. And if you check over on the radar with the lightning, you can see that's the active part of the storm right now. But we still have some potent bands coming into Martin County up near Fort Pierce. We've had some special marine warnings talking about gusts to 40, some water spouts, and these winds will be on again, off again with the strongest bands. Now, when you're not in one of those bands, the winds aren't so bad, gusting to 24 at Miami International, 25 down at Opelika. Go up into Broward County, just got a couple showers coming in over Broward County recently, gusting to 29 at Fort Lauderdale, 28 at Hollywood, and at Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport, as well as Pompano. So it's windy, it's gusty, and up in Palm Beach County, probably a little bit heavier rain recently. You've gusted to 39 in Boca Raton. So here's a little bit of a look at the future radar. The big question is, does this business end of the storm here on the northern side come on shore here in southeast Florida overnight tonight? If it does, it's going to be very windy, and we could have some power outages, Alex.
All right, so something to keep in mind if you live in these areas, and much of south coast of Florida has experienced those gusty showers as the storm has approached. Paul Goodlow is in Palm Beach today. Paul, you've seen the winds pick up, and you've mentioned just how tropical it feels out there.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to lose my rain pants because, yes, this stuff, it breathes somewhat, but I tell you what, not having rain gear on breathes even better than having breathable rain gear on. But Dr. Nab talked about the close approach of Isaias here. A big concern we have is you can see how angry and agitated the Atlantic is right now. High tide is going to occur tomorrow morning. Low tide just after around 1 a.m. in the morning, but then high tide coming up around 6, 7 in the morning. So you're going to see even a bigger push of water on shore here and wave action. The good news is I guess the coastal shelf here is pretty steep, which limits a big storm surge with the approach of Isaias, unlike perhaps the Gulf Coast. But we will have some rise of water here, but we're going to have some of the strongest winds come on shore as well. If you got plans in the morning, you might want to think about delaying them, because we can still be dealing with perhaps trees or power lines down anywhere close to here, the intercoastal, and also heads up around Lake Okeechobee, which is just a few miles in the interior. Well, more coverage here from the Florida coast coming up here on the Weather Channel.
COP. Better life.
Excuse me. Well, Hurricane Isaias, or tropical storm right now, expected to re-strengthen to hurricane strength. It's putting the entire eastern seaboard on alert. gosh, you get a sunburn up on portions of the Northeast today. Now, the city of Myrtle Beach, they've issued a civil emergency declaration. Local leaders are urging residents to take all necessary precautions to prepare for the storm. New Hanover County, which includes Wilmington, North Carolina, they've got a capacity of 200 at shelters per CDC and Red Cross guidelines. For comparison, at the height of Florence, shelters were holding about 1,200 people, so definitely minimizing the amount of people in those shelters. And in the Northeast, where they're not going to escape the effects of this storm, Bayhead, New Jersey could begin to see those tropical storm conditions by Tuesday. But as I mentioned, gosh, spectacular day out there today on those Northeast and Mid-Atlantic beaches. From Delaware beaches to the Jersey Shore, it has been good. Take a look at our rainfall total forecast, though. This goes to show you what we're expecting across this part of the country from the beaches of, say, South Carolina, around Georgetown, Myrtle Beach, all the way up into the D.C. metro area. 3 to 5 inch totals are possible. So we're going to be looking at some heavy rain. That's going to increase our threat of flooding. And flash flooding, highest chances of that where you see this deeper shade of green as we go Monday and into early Tuesday. So a Raleigh, a Wilmington, a Myrtle Beach, even a Charleston and Savannah, I want you to be aware of that possibility. We know those areas that we watch, and one of those is the city of Charleston. We've also got to talk about the tide cycles there in the low country. Sunday, 8:14 p.m., but especially Monday morning, I want to be watching that tide, that high tide, and our late day Monday high tide, because I think some of the biggest impacts in terms of the heaviest rain from this storm will be coming in Charleston on Monday. By Tuesday at lunchtime, Raleigh getting soaked. So around those cities, around Raleigh, around Durham, you're going to see a drenching start to your day on Tuesday. Even places like Philadelphia, though, beginning to see the effects by later in the day on Tuesday. Wind speed forecast. Take a look at this. We're going to be watching those winds pick up into parts of North Carolina by Tuesday morning. So in addition to getting in on the heavy rain, you could get in some gusty winds as well. And Savannah, 20+ mile-per-hour gusts Monday. It's the afternoon where we'll see the strongest of gusts in excess of 40 miles an hour possible, 1 to 2 inches possible there. And of course, the storm moves up into North Carolina. And joining us now on the phone, Drew Pearson, the director of Dare County, North Carolina's emergency management. Drew, North Carolina declared a state of emergency earlier today. So what does that mean for your county and the residents that live there?
Hey, Alex, it's Drew Pearson, and what it means for us is we took the same actions at the local level. We declared a local state of emergency, issued a mandatory evacuation order for our most vulnerable piece of our county called Hatteras Island. We never want to do that. We never want to evacuate, but when we have to, when we're faced with potential challenges, life-threatening challenges, we took that action to get our visitors someplace safe, get our residents safe, and allow us to get ready for the potential impacts that the storm is going to bring to us.
We know the pandemic has kind of thrown an extra kink into planning. In terms of advice for your residents, how have things changed for this storm?
Well, from a pandemic perspective, we do not shelter here in Dare County. We're lucky enough to have a great state that opens inland shelters for us. So if they need to follow the guidelines that are being given, practice social distancing, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, all those great things, hand sanitize, wash the hands. We're lucky that we have a great state, a great support network that helps us out when we have to do that sheltering. For our residents that do stay here, I just encourage them to keep abreast of the weather, keep an eye on it, and stay out of the ocean. The ocean's going to be dangerous. We have a swimming prohibition in place, and people need to respect that ocean, and stay safe if they decide to ride it out on Hatteras Island. We hope they will. We hope they'll evacuate.
Yeah, I mean, this area is your expertise. What are your greatest concerns for the county? Is it the danger of the ocean itself?
The danger of the ocean and the sound. We're surrounded by water out here. Our main highway down on Hatteras Island, NC12, in spaces it's only feet from the ocean or feet from the sound. We see rapidly rising water, bringing sand and water across the road into people's homes, even on a winter storm. So a storm like this one, where it may not come to us as a hurricane, maybe as a tropical storm or less, it really doesn't matter the category. We see impacts. We want to make sure people are safe from that threat of water, that rising storm surge that can kill people.
All right, well, Drew Pearson, Director of Dare County, North Carolina's Emergency Management, thank you so much for joining us. You know, we track this storm into the northeast then as well. Dr. Knabb could be seeing some big rainfall totals even there.
Absolutely could. So water could be a big problem with this storm. And again, I want to show what one of the models is depicting in terms of the circulation and why we're going to have a lot of water problems. Just to reemphasize the dangers here along the coast of South Carolina and North Carolina, look at this. Even with the system centered inland, you could have very heavy rainfall over North Carolina, and with the flow off the Atlantic, you could drive water into the back portions of the sounds, and then after it leaves, you could have the backside, sound side flooding in the sound side of the Outer Banks. And then look at this heavy rain shield that this could be bringing into the Northeast. Very high rain rates, and this could go right over some of the big cities of the Northeast. Look at the rainfall totals that the European model is kicking out. You know, could be near half a foot in places like New York City, like Washington, D.C. And of course, a big flood event could again happen in the Carolinas.
Love it that way.
Better days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 89 degrees under cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, low 74. Winds southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, intervals of clouds and sunshine. A stray afternoon or evening thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, variably cloudy with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 40%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
I want to take you back to the severe weather across sections of the mid-Atlantic. We take you down into Virginia. This is very close to the state line with West Virginia. We are on the north side of Roanoke, Bottork County. I should know this. I live not far from there. We are looking north of Amsterdam, and this is actually a confirmed tornado. Confirmed tornado was located over Fincastle or near Troutville. It's moving northeast at 10 miles an hour, so it is not moving quickly. Flying debris could cause problems. Again, this is a confirmed tornado, and you can see it's riding parallel basically to Route 81 there down near Natural Bridge and Buchanan. We're seeing that storm move parallel to us. So you can see that area of rotation very close to 220 now. In fact, nearly over 220. This storm is going to continue to move to the northeast around 10 miles an hour. So if you are in Eagle Rock, if you are in Springwood, I want you in your lowest level, most interior room. Be careful. This is a confirmed tornado here in parts of Southwest Virginia. Let's get you back to Paul in in Palm Beach, Florida. Of course, tracking the very latest on Isaias, a strong tropical storm right now.
It is. It's still bringing a lot of tropical air. Dew point 77, 78. Our air temperature went from 90 to about 79 with the rain showers that came through. Now the rain showers a little farther north. You head up towards, say, Fort Pierce or so. We're feeling a little bit of a cool outflow from that, but we're still dealing with some pretty angry waves getting higher and higher on the beach. Still threatening thousands upon thousands just here in Palm Beach of turtle nests. I talked to Rob, one of the coastal program managers. He's saying about 4,000 nests are still in the ground here, and their fear is they could lose about half of them. One thing I did find, though, is a little coin. I think it's a quarter, but it's kind of oxidized here with the salt water. But this is the beginning of the Treasure Coast, because the Spanish galleons centuries ago were sunk by passing hurricanes, and I guess some of the treasure washed ashore. Some is still out there, so that's why they kind of call this the beginning of the Treasure Coast here in Florida. But we're going to be battered by yet another tropical storm or hurricane, whatever Isaias determines or becomes. We're still going to have a lot of impacts lashing the coastline lashing the interior as well with strong winds and also heavy rain. We're rain-free right now, but enjoy it while it lasts. It's not going to last all night. A lot more rain coming, especially as we head into Sunday. Let's get more expert analysis and head back to the lab now with Dr. Rick Knapp.
Well, Paul, it's going to be totally dependent on exactly where you are on the east coast of Florida, what your memories of this storm are once it's over. Some of you might get some really heavy rain and strong winds. Some of you might luck out and don't get much. It's going to be the way we have to experience a disorganized system right on that tropical storm hurricane threshold going on a parallel track relative to the coastline. Really hard. Just a few miles difference in where the bands, where the weather sets up will determine what you experience. Got a blow up of thunderstorms there just north of the center, and we have 2 Hurricane Hunter planes just like last night. Got the Air Force that went in first. NOAA took off from Lakeland. Now they're both in there flying at different altitudes, doing a little air traffic control there, and we'll continue to fly around in Isaias tonight to see if it is strengthening or re-strengthening. Certainly, it looks like it went below 70 miles an hour this afternoon. Last few visible images of the day show how disorganized it is, and it is because of some wind shear and dry air. It's trying to expand the outflow again with this new blow-up of thunderstorms, but if we look more closely, you can see how it's still struggling. Now, here is the open swirl there that came off of Andros. So that's the low-level center, which is right in here. And then with this blow-up of thunderstorms right in there, well, that's not vertically aligned with the low-level center. When you look at the radar, you can see how there's a little curl here, kind of a mid-level swirl, but the surface center is back in here. So it's not vertically aligned. It doesn't look like it's on a path to rapidly re-strengthen, but it still could bring some of these tropical storm conditions to many parts of the east coast of the U.S. Some of you will get it. Some of you won't, but those of you who do could have power outages, down trees, and of course the very heavy rainfall no matter what, Alex.
Yeah, still the problems that you don't want, right? You guys have had a lot of questions, so we're going to continue answering some of these this hour. Let's start with this one. When do you get to ask a hurricane expert a question, right? Dan wants to know, how much rain will or could New York City get?
It could, if you are unlucky, be several inches. Could even be a half a foot or more. The European model is kicking out that 5 to 8 inch bullseye right near New York City. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. It could be Philadelphia, it could be Baltimore, it could be D.C., could be Hartford that gets it. The European model is showing more rain than the GFS is. But I think, Alex, there'll be enough rainfall that in an urban area, you could have flash flooding when you get into Tuesday. So stay off the roads and you'll be fine.
Yeah, it looks like we could be looking at a flash flood potential from Florida all the way to Maine out of this. So really important to stay tuned. We are with you, by the way, all day and night tracking. Right now, Tropical Storm Isaias. Stay with us. Our coverage continues right after this break.
A lot of the healthy foods
for big imaginations.
This is the weekend to stay home. This is the weekend that we stay with our families, we shelter in place. It's not for parties. Just, be safe, be careful, and certainly stay off the beach. And it's going to only get worse.
We also have thousands and thousands of utility workers that are just standing by up and down the East Coast.
Those were some of the early sights and sounds of the impacts already making themselves be felt here from Isaias across the Florida coastline. Right now, we have 77 million Americans in the cone of concern. Tropical Storm Isaias still battering the Bahamas as we speak, while inching closer and closer to this Florida East Coast now. We have live coverage here in the field as well as back in the headquarters of Atlanta with expert analysis with our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp, and meteorologist Alex Wilson, all giving the very latest on what's going on across the lower 48, as well as what's going on in the tropics as well. We got special coverage of Isaias right here on the Weather Channel. Thanks for staying with us. I'm meteorologist Paul Griffo, live in Palm Beach, Florida. And if you were watching this a while ago, this is the beginning of the Treasure Coast. I did find a coin, still pretty heavily oxidized. Turns out it's just an American quarter. One of the state quarters from Kansas has a little bison on there. We did discover that. But here on the beach, a big concern is that what could be impacted is, yes, losing sand, losing beaches, beautiful beaches here in the Palm Beach area, but also on the beach and in the beach, sea turtles. 4 different types of sea turtles which nest here regularly. Hawksbill, leatherback, loggerhead, even green turtles. 7,000 just here in the town of Palm Beach alone nest this year. There 3,000 have hatched, 4,000 still on the ground. 2,000 could be lost. Half of the remaining nests could be lost because of the wave impact, depending on how intense and how long a duration it'll be pounding these beaches. And that's a big concern because the forecast has Isaias coming pretty close, not making landfall, but kind of slowing down and slowly moving across this area and past this area before it kind of parallels the coastline well north of us here. I want to bring in Dr. Rick Knabb. And Dr. Knabb, that's one of the bigger impacts, and what we have to watch is the motion, the speed of this storm, because hours upon hours is going to give us a lot of strong winds. You know, yeah, a 70, 90 mile per hour wind gust can cause some damage, but even perhaps 12 hours of 40 mile per hour wind gusts could also do quite a bit of damage. So the length of time this storm takes to get on out of here could have perhaps a factor in terms of how much damage we'll see here on the coast.
Yeah, Paul, you're absolutely right. It has slowed down to about 10 miles an hour in its forward motion, a lot slower than it was yesterday and especially the day before. And it's already producing gusty winds around 40 miles an hour up in the Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie area, north of where Paul is. So it's not just where this blow up of thunderstorms is, where the bad weather is. You can see those clouds zipping along straight into the east coast of Florida. Now, you might be thinking, oh, the system is at 70 miles an hour, so it's less dangerous than it was when it was a hurricane. But I would say that in some ways this is more dangerous, potentially, because some people might think, oh, now I don't need to prepare. Now I don't need to take it seriously. Now I can let my guard down. And that's when these storms get you, when you're not looking and when you're not preparing and when you're not expecting it and you make some bad decisions. So we'll go through here why this is still an impactful system in terms of wind and water, coastal and inland. Hurricane Center still has the hurricane warning up because they're forecasting it to regain hurricane strength. Now, don't make too much of the fact if it doesn't quite get the hurricane, because there's not a whole lot of difference between 65, 70, 75 mile an hour winds. And these tropical storm warnings extend all the way up into northeastern Florida. And now we've got tropical storm watches for the coastal areas of Georgia and South Carolina, and these will be extended northward with time. It's just that we're now a couple days away from the winds arriving in places like Charleston. It still has a large circulation to it, and it still has some very deep convection. Now, here's the low-level center that was exposed for a while. Now it's peeking underneath that canopy with the heavy thunderstorms, and it's a little bit lopsided. You got the mid-level swirl up in here, so it's not totally vertically lined, but there's some heavy rain and some lightning there. And then these bands have had some energy to them. They could spin up a water spout along the way, and sustained winds of tropical storm force could start arriving overnight in places like West Palm Beach, during the day tomorrow in places like Melbourne. So the weather will go downhill from south to north. At the very least, a life-threatening high risk of rip currents on the east coast of Florida and the southeast states. Now, here's our new track and intensity forecast, and look at how many of you have significant and increasing chances of sustained winds of tropical storm force. And watch the trends in these. They will probably go up for some of you, and these are areas where we will eventually get tropical storm watches and warnings. High chances of tropical storm conditions on the east coast of Florida, and I'm really concerned about power outages, not because it's an inconvenience, that's one thing, but because they can be surprisingly dangerous or even deadly if you're not careful. You got to not operate those generators indoors, not in your garage, not on your patio. Get it away from the windows. Don't use candles, because that can cause a fire, because they tend to be left alone. That's dangerous. Stay away from down power lines. And Paul, I know a lot of folks who rely on power for their medical equipment, and people have died because they weren't in a place that had backup power. So we all need to look in on those who rely on specialized needs for their medical care.
Especially now during the pandemic as well. Thanks, Dr. Knabb. We'll get back to you in a few. All right, here's what we know right now. An estimated 77 million people live within the 5-day forecast cone of Isaias, whether it's a hurricane or a tropical storm. And Florida Emergency Management says that only those COVID test sites near the East Coast are closed. Others in the West Coast Panhandle are still open. And at least 16 of Florida's 67 counties have declared states of emergency. Unfortunately, 2 fatalities are blamed on Isaias in the Dominican Republic when it hit there on Thursday evening. One man was electrocuted, and a tree fell on a 5-year-old child. So it's already a deadly tropical storm or a hurricane, I guess, at that point. So still a big concern of more impacts as it approaches the U.S., especially here on the east coast of Florida. And speaking of Florida, I want to bring in Bill Johnson. He is the Palm Beach County Emergency Management Director. Thanks for joining us via Skype this evening. And brand new territory for you. We're talking an approaching tropical storm / hurricane, but also during a pandemic. What is Palm Beach County doing differently this year, perhaps compared to years in past?
Well, our Emergency Operations Center has been activated now for 140 days. We brought in just a few additional people 2 days ago to respond to the storm. We're doing everything we can to make sure that everybody is separated with plenty of distancing. We're holding smaller meetings in large rooms. We're wearing masks, screening people. In terms of our community, we are taking shelter now. In fact, just out them now. Now. So it's not going to happen.
Okay. Sorry, Bill Johnson, thanks you for talking to us. We're having some technical difficulties hearing you very well, so we're going to try to establish a better connection with you a little bit later on in the hour. So again, that was Bill Johnson, Palm Beach County Emergency Management Director. We'll try to clear up that audio. Another concern is shelters. I know that there's some shelters open here in Palm Beach County, but to the north, St. Lucie County, there are no shelters, no public shelters open. So this is still a concern, and one of the biggest threats I think will be when we have some of the strongest winds and rain occur. Sunset comes up in about an hour and a half, and we can see the approach as we head overnight through tomorrow morning. Hopefully the approach and the passing by of the center obviously is, but we're still going to have a lot more impacts well before that center gets that close. But it's going to be the all night, and perhaps we're going to have 10 hours of darkness when we have some of the intense impacts coming on through here when people are trying to sleep. I want to bring in Dr. Rick Knabb, and that's going to perhaps catch a lot of people off guard, because right now we see patches of blue sky around me. It hasn't rained here in about an hour, but I'm hoping people don't let their guard down and thinking, oh, I'll just, business as usual. And then in the middle of the night, Dr. Knabb, we could have damaging winds and maybe even heavy flood-producing rain move across not only the coastline, but even areas inland.
Yeah, Paul, you're kind of in between bands on the northwest side, and then the really heavy stuff is not far offshore, off to the southeast. So this is going to be really close, and like Paul says, starting at night potentially for some of you. So it's a really, really good night. Once that sun goes down, southeast coast of Florida, you want to be off the roads because of blinding rain at times that'll be in and out very quickly. You know, these little cells that are just offshore can cause very quick downpours that can be very gusty. So right now, gusting to 22 miles an hour at Miami International and Opelika, that's without the downpours. As soon as you get one of those showers in the outer bands coming in, those winds ramp up to 30 or 40 miles an hour in gusts. Up in Broward County, same sort of thing. You're in between bands right now, but still you're gusting over 20 miles an hour without those downpours. And then up in Palm Beach County, gusting to 30 at Boca, 25 at West Palm Beach. And again, we were trying to talk to Bill Johnson at the Palm Beach County Emergency Operations Center. I know him well. Their folks would be happy to talk to you if you live in Palm Beach County and you're concerned about sheltering. If you live in a mobile home, you might not want to spend the evening there, because even in tropical storm conditions, mobile homes can be a very, very dangerous place to be. So we got these tropical storm and hurricane warnings still up on the east coast of Florida. And as the system moves generally along the east coast of the U.S., strong winds are going to be a problem for so many millions of you. And we're highly confident that it's coming your way, because look at all these European model tracks, all the alternative possible scenarios. None of them miss North Carolina, and hardly any of them miss New England. And so all the big cities are going to be impacted by that. And we've got not only the wind that could cause power outages and down trees, and that's dangerous in its own right, but we could have a very significant flood event. And Alex, I know I want to talk to people in North Carolina really briefly, because, we've had multiple inland flood events in North Carolina. A lot of people have died driving their car on the water-covered roads. And remember last year, we had people told to evacuate from the Outer Banks and Dorian, and they didn't go, and they had to be rescued by boat and by aircraft. So let's not do that this year.
Yeah.
Make smart decisions. These storms are generally very survivable if we plan ahead and we make smart decisions during the storm itself. We look, beyond Florida, the rest of the U.S. East Coast also preparing for Isaias. South Carolina will start feeling the wind Sunday evening. You could see some flooding in the low country. It's called that for a reason, right? Officials in North Carolina's Outer Banks, they've actually already ordered an evacuation of residents there in Ocracoke. That goes into effect tomorrow morning. That also includes visitors, by the way. Now, a decision about the northern parts of the Outer Banks, that's expected tomorrow. Up in New Jersey, there's concern that actually the full moon on Tuesday could coincide with Isaias, and that would increase the potential erosion along the beaches. So a lot of things to think about, a lot of balls in the air, so to speak. We talk about all the ongoing issues, and then, of course, we've got the pandemic as well. Maybe one positive out of the pandemic is, from what I seem to have heard from a lot of you guys, is that you said one thing is you maybe did your hurricane preparedness a little bit sooner. We've had a lot more supplies than we typically had, so we didn't all have that rush to the grocery stores because now we're keeping a longer supply of goods. So there's a good thing, and we've got our, our medications on hand. Rain will be a big concern for a lot of people, so a lot of you could be looking at some big rainfall totals and then flash flood problems. 3 to 5 inches. That's what we see in that yellow. And you can see there were a lot of areas in that yellow color. Possibility of flash flooding Monday into early Tuesday would be greatest in this dark green area. So portions of south central Virginia, probably around Richmond south. We've got Raleigh and Wilmington in that zone. We've got Florence and Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, Charleston as well. And then we got Savannah, Georgia in play for some possible flash flooding tomorrow and again into the morning hours on Tuesday. The steering of Isaias is interesting because obviously this storm is just going to move right up the coast, almost following the 95 corridor, right, from Florida all the way to Maine. There's a weakness in between two high pressure areas, and that storm is just going to kind of squeeze in between there and work right up along it. Also helped by this dip in the jet stream, so that's going to help to steer it up and along the coast. But of course, we've got the chance for the heavy rain and also some strong winds. I think that could really be an issue, particularly into eastern North Carolina into the early part of the week. So there's Monday and Tuesday with the rain and thunderstorms working their way up the coast. Gusty thunderstorms a possibility. So in addition to the showers, you can get some gusty winds with these. So falling trees would definitely be a concern of mine, really up and down the coastline. Look at these totals out of the European model, by the way, picking up on the potential for a half foot of rain, perhaps around the New York City metro area, up into Maine as well. So, Paul, there is a lot to think about. This isn't just a Florida only thing. This is Florida all the way to Maine.
It is, and also today is the first day of August, so we're heading towards the peak. We still have, 6 weeks before the official peak of hurricane season, and this season has already been kind of record-setting in terms of the pace. Right now, we're still watching the waves getting bigger and bigger. Now, the center of Isaias is still about 110, 100, maybe 20 miles just off the edge of that pier there. That's the Lake Worth Pier here in Palm Beach County. And as that emerges off the Bahamas, that center is expected to perhaps get even better organized and approach this area overnight tonight into early Sunday morning. So as it does so, moving off Andros Island, we're going to see bigger and bigger winds create bigger and bigger swells and waves, and all that starts crashing onto these beaches here. And again, the winds not only creating waves here on the ocean, we got the intercoastal. We also have Lake Okeechobee as well. Not to mention, that's going to physically, the wind, push that water onto the opposite side of the intercoastal or even the Lake Okeechobee as well. So we have a lot of other concerns of the wind causing flooding on the coast, intercoastal, as well as Lake Okeechobee. We're back with more after this.
My new normal?
You're live on the ground. Right now, it's coming down.
The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 90 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 74. Winds southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, sunshine and clouds mixed. A stray afternoon or evening thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, Variably cloudy with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 40%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back into our continuing coverage. Want to break away from Isaias for a moment to get you up into parts of southwest Virginia. We've got Beaufort County under a tornado warning, and this is a confirmed tornado. This storm located near Eagle Rock, Virginia, and it's moving to the northeast at 10 miles an hour. So the National Weather Service there has issued this tornado warning with that tag that it is a confirmed damaging tornado. There was a video captured of that funnel cloud earlier, and this has been skirting right along Interstate 81, but notice it's to the left of Interstate 81, or to the north and west. So it's not actually going to cross over the roadway. The path of this storm continues to take that just along the highway, but you can see that area of rotation. So the reds and the greens are going towards the radar, the reds going away, and you can see that. We had that really tight couplet earlier. Last couple scans, we've seen that not quite as intense, but still, because this was a confirmed tornado, or we've had a confirmed tornado in this, if you're northeast of Fincastle, I want you in that lowest level, most interior room. I don't want anybody traveling along 220 right now. In addition to that tornado possibility, there's also really heavy rain, so it's a tough go into this part of Virginia this evening. That warning remains in effect until 7:30. All right, want to get you caught up now on the very latest with Tropical Storm Isaias. Our Paul Goodlow is in Palm Beach, Florida this evening.
Hey, good evening there, Alex. We're still watching the waves getting higher and higher in terms of just their wave height, as well as getting higher and higher on the beach here, and they're crashing a little bit higher on the beach. And they also take a look out here towards Lake Worth Pier. It was kind of destroyed back in 2004. Hurricanes Francis and Jean destroyed the pier, rebuilt in 2009, reopened then, and it's about 20 feet above the ocean level at the very end of that pier. We've been watching waves crashing about halfway up the end of that pier there. So do the math. We're talking like 8 to 10 foot waves out there, and it's that type of wave height we expect to get even higher and higher. If you're watching us last week covering Hurricane Hannah in the Corpus Christi area on Padre Island, they had a pier built similar to that because the floorboards are meant to kind of be removed or perhaps give way if you have big waves there. We don't expect that type of wave activity, but it's something that was unexpected last week with Hannah. So even though this is a tropical storm, maybe strengthens to a hurricane, we can still have unique impacts as we have the approach of Isaias as we head overnight and into tomorrow morning. So a lot of the impacts could be happening in the dead of night. So as you go to bed or prepare to go to bed this evening, be prepared. You could be waking up to a different looking house or neighborhood than you will see right now before this sun sets. Alex?
Totally. You know, Paul, you may even also be waking up to the kids crawling into your bed, the pets crawling into your bed, you know, when there are thunderstorms or the wind is loud. Everybody kind of seems to come around.
They sure do. Everyone's trying to flee from the wind here, and this is going to be also a very big wind producer, not just the coast, all across South Florida. You got to batten down the hatches.
And, you know, Paul brings up a really good point. Trees could come down during the overnight hours, so make sure, you know, if you have a lot of trees around your house, I would sleep in an interior room, lowest level, almost treat it like a tornado warning, because trees falling into homes, so many times we have issues with that. So grab the kids and the pets and everybody, you know, have a little slumber party in your safe spot. Let's get you back up to the Ohio Valley, where we continue to deal with this severe thunderstorm watch. Portions of Ohio, Pennsylvania, a little bit of Kentucky, but the largest state included, or the state with the most counties included, is the state of West Virginia, where we've got some severe warnings right now. Of course, still watching our Southwest Virginia tornado warning for that confirmed tornado, but Charleston area there in West Virginia has a severe thunderstorm warning. We'll get you to that in just a moment. It's Beaufort County now moving up to the north too, and that's going to move towards the Lexington area. I believe that is Kanawha County under that warning there. We've got Calhoun, Gilmer, Ritchie, and Roane County in West Virginia as well. So that's that northern storm that's going to be to the east, or rather the west of I-79. But we get you up towards Lexington, Virginia. So now Rockbridge County, portion portions of Rockbridge County are included within that tornado warning. So that's being extended. This has been a confirmed tornado. I want you to be in your safe spot. And again, we're watching Charleston. They're the capital of West Virginia. You've got some strong winds, some hail possible. Storms into southwest Pennsylvania as well. And tomorrow we could watch for more severe weather. This time we shift it farther to the north and east. So now we get in on places like Hazleton and Scranton in Pennsylvania, Paterson, New Jersey, Syracuse, Binghamton, New York, Albany, as well as western Connecticut, western Massachusetts, and western Vermont. And Dr. Knabb, you make a great point. We get a few strong storms there, even not strong storms, just big rain producers. That could set the stage for more problems as our storm Isaias makes its way up later in the week.
Yeah, wet soils and fully leafed trees and a tropical storm.
Yes.
Bad combination.
Bad combo.
Bad combination, and we could have some power outages, trees coming down, and some flooding rains. Tuesday is going to be the big day for the Northeast, especially into Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And look at how much rain we're going to get. It's going to be bad in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, D.C., Baltimore, and then going north from there. Even places like Philadelphia. We know how flood-prone you are in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York City, and up into New England. So we've got to be promising ourselves we're not going to drive our car onto any water-covered road or around a barricade or let the kids play in the water. So water can kill in a tropical storm, even if the wind does not.
Power outages can be .com to shop and buy today.
All right, we're breaking away from Isaias for just a moment because we still have our breaking tornado warning here in the state of Virginia. And I can always rely on my phone-a-friend Twitter to tell me helpful pronunciations. It's Botetourt County there in the state of Virginia, now moving into Rockbridge. So this is a tornado warning for a confirmed tornado. This tornado has been spotted and could still be causing damage now as it moves out of Botetourt and into Rockbridge counties. You notice where Interstate 81 is. So we're north of Buchanan, we're north of Natural Bridge. This is really following right along Interstate 81. However, up there in Lexington, that's where we've got that congregation between 81 and 64. So if you were going to travel out of Virginia and into West Virginia, you'd hop there on I-64. So this could eventually cross over that roadway. No, that's a pretty major highway into this part of the country for travel. So if you plan on traveling that way, I'd use caution. We're looking at the Lexington area just after the top of the hour. So you still have about a half hour to go before that storm approaches the I-64 corridor. But between now and then, we've got Rapps Mill, we've got Collierstown, Effinger, and then Busselburg would be beyond Lexington. Only Rapps Mill, it looks like, is currently under our tornado warning, but we've been watching this continue to get extended. It's still showing those signs of rotation. And again, this is for a confirmed tornado. It is 30 minutes past the hour. We welcome you back into our special Weather Channel coverage. We are tracking Tropical Storm Isaias. We are waiting on a new advisory, and I don't want you to get caught up on tropical storm, high-end tropical storm versus low-end Category 1 hurricane, because wind, rain still going to be a problem as we move into the overnight. And actually, the National Hurricane Center is expecting this storm to re-strengthen to a hurricane while we're sleeping. So I want to get you caught up on what's making headlines right now before we get you over to Dr. Knabb. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says despite Isaias weakening to a tropical storm, you can still expect power outages in the state. About 10,000 utility workers, they're pre-staging to restore power after the storm. The city of Charleston, South Carolina, they're opening several parking garages free of charge for residents. And next week, the city is also going to push back garbage collection by one day. That's critical to know because, Dr. Knabb, too many times people take their garbage out, ahead of this storm, and then we end up with things blowing everywhere. So with one of these storms, you got to think about what's in your yard. Bring things inside that you don't want to be, chasing around the neighborhood, or that could be a hazard as they get thrown around, because even though this is tropical storm now, winds are still going to be an issue with this.
And you could gust to hurricane force, and it's not so much the strength of the wind, it's what's flying around in the wind.
Absolutely.
That's what causes the damage and causes injuries and sometimes fatalities. Trees can come down on homes and cars. We got to take this seriously, or else it'll be life-threatening and catch us when we're not ready. Isaias is centered off to the southeast of the southeast coast of Florida, has moved north of Andros Island. There's the low-level center underneath the convection once again. And if you switch over to the radar, you can see where there's a lot of lightning. There's that really central area of thunderstorms, although it's not right over the low-level center. So it still is a little bit disorganized, but look at these bands on the northern and northwestern side. They are rushing into the east coast of Florida. Possibility of water spouts, gusts to 40 miles an hour in those bands. So it'd be a bad night to be out on the roads in South Florida because it might be okay and just a little windy and breezy for the moment. Then a band comes in and it gets really gusty, and at night, that's very, very dangerous. Here's our new track and intensity forecast as of 5 p.m. We'll get another one at 11. But I wanted to take you through the European model depiction of this. It has it centered just off of West Palm Beach by tomorrow morning. So Freeport in the Bahamas could be getting lashed with strong winds, maybe even some storm surge. And look how close this goes to the coast of Florida. It could make landfall. It could stay just offshore, but it's kind of a weed eater track, and a lot of you could get tropical storm conditions out of this. Then when we get to Monday night, this could be causing some tropical storm force winds, heavy rainfall, and maybe storm surge and waves on the coast of South Carolina. This could be a very, very dangerous, life-threatening inland flood event for North Carolina and Virginia, and then a storm surge problem for eastern North Carolina. It could start by pushing the water into the Sounds, and then when it moves north of there on Tuesday, could push water to the Sound side flooding of the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then look at how much rain and wind we could be getting in the big cities of the Northeast Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night. Big cities could get some urban flooding, some really gusty winds, power outages, stay off the roads. And Paul, we got to get people to take this seriously because, again, not much difference between 65, 70, and 70 miles an hour in the max winds. Tropical storm conditions for a lot of folks and heavy rain as well.
And we all preach it's all about impacts, impacts, impacts. So no matter what the name is, it's impacts. And don't get caught up on the center. It might not make landfall here in Florida, but the impacts will be felt not only on the coast, but well inland. We're going to talk about some of those impacts we're expecting with Isaias coming up as our coverage continues all day long here on the Weather Channel.
It's just your way.
Perfect.
New video into the Weather Channel. Check out the rough surf in Singer Island, Florida. This is the northern portion of Palm Beach County. One of my favorite stretches of beaches there in northern Palm Beach. High surf advisory in effect through tomorrow evening. I'd be worried about rip currents. And you're going to have occasional really heavy downpours and strong wind gusts. Could have some water spouts coming in. I mean, it's a dangerous time on the coast of Palm Beach County. But if you're smart about it, there's no reason why you can't stay safe. And a gentleman who's going to help you do that is at the Palm Beach County Emergency Operations Center. Now, Palm Beach County has declared a local state of emergency due to the approaching storm. And joining us now via Skype is their Emergency Management Director in Palm Beach County, Bill Johnson. Bill, it's great to be talking with you again. I know we've interacted many times over the years, and I know what a wonderful operation you all have down there. Difficult year and a challenging storm.
Thank you, Dr. Knabb. Yes, we're running two simultaneous incidents at the same time, COVID as well as this hurricane.
What's your major concern for the overnight period for the residents in your county? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to not do?
Well, first of all, we want them to be wrapping up any of their preparedness activities now and start beginning to shelter in place. We have opened up four of our shelters, plus a special needs shelter and a pet-friendly shelter. So we're hoping that, we'll start closing hopefully everybody is starting hunkering down in that now, sheltering in place. And then we want everybody pretty much to stay put, be ready. The weather conditions are going to start deteriorating pretty soon. So again, just hoping that people will stay safe, stay in their home, that you're safer at home. We have instituted all kinds of safety protocols because of COVID in our shelters. So we're hoping that if you live in a facility or a home or a mobile home, for example, that may not do so well in high winds, that you have made the decision to move to an appropriate facility. Our shelters are available. You still might have a little bit of time to move, but we need to make those decisions and those actions pretty soon. And once we get that done, let's hunker down, and then let's stay put.
Are you most concerned about people in mobile homes, or are there other situations that some of your residents and visitors might find themselves in that you'd want to encourage them to maybe find a friend or a family member, or if need be, a shelter to stay in?
Well, exactly. We're concerned about primarily our mobile homes because they don't do very well in tropical storm winds or even hurricane force winds. But we've also notified all of our special needs clients, and that's why we've opened our special needs shelter. And so those people that are electrically dependent, we have moved several of them into our special needs shelter. So again, that people who cannot tolerate long periods of electrical outages or power outages, we have set up our shelter and made protocols for their care.
Well, Bill, is there anything else you want to get across to the folks there? I know you've got an overnight period where people might be tempted to get out on the roads if they perceive the weather's not all that bad, but these bans can come in on very little notice and cause some big problems if you're out and about.
Exactly, and we've been having rain for quite some time now, so the ground's pretty saturated, and these winds will continue into tomorrow morning. So I'm hoping that everyone will continue to stay safer at home and let us get out there after the winds die down. I expect that we'll have trees uprooted, power lines down. Let us get out there and make sure that the roads are safe before everyone gets out and ventures out. So please, let's just stay put. Hunker down, stay safe at home, and then once we have a chance to get to see what's going on, then venture out.
Our Bill Johnson, Director of Palm Beach County Emergency Management. I know he's talking to the local weather service office down there and the Hurricane Center. What he's telling you to do down there is based on the science, based on the guidance he's getting, and knows what he's talking about. Thank you again, Bill. Alex, one thing he mentioned, we've talked about how important it is to look in on folks who might be dependent on electricity for their medical needs. So help them find a safe place overnight tonight.
100%. So many times we know people who rely on those oxygen machines, things that need to be plugged in. Even if you don't know if maybe your elderly neighbor has any of that, but just give them a ring this evening, or stay socially distanced, but knock on the door and stay back, wear a mask, and just ask them if there's anything they need out ahead of the storm. Always, good to check in on those friends, those family members, make sure everybody's set. All right, we're going to be following this storm up the coast, by the way. Of course, we're looking at Myrtle Beach. They could be seeing some wind and rain out of this. Flooding could be a concern. Wilmington, North Carolina, they've set up shelters much less in capacity than what we saw during Florence in 2018. So they're doing the social distance thing in those shelters to be responsible. And Bayhead, New Jersey, another spot that could be looking at impacts. We look at the Jersey Shore, a high full moon coming around the time of Isaias' arrival up there. So coastal erosion could be a problem there, too. There's a lot of things to think about with this storm. One of the biggest things I want you to think and keep in mind is the possibility of flash flooding, because you can see there's a big stretch of big rainfall, 3 to 5 inch totals, all the way from South Carolina into parts of Pennsylvania and Jersey. So flash flooding absolutely on the table. Monday into early Tuesday, these are the areas with the greatest risk of flash flooding. Parts of Virginia back down into Georgia. By the way, our new advisory on Isaias has just come in. Dr. Nab's looking it over. We're going to break it down for you after the break.
Every day is sweet.
We love it that way.
Better days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 89 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 74. Winds southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, sunshine and clouds mixed. A stray afternoon or evening thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, variably cloudy with scattered thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 40%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
New advisory is in on Tropical Storm Isaias. It is still a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Moving northwest even a little bit more slowly. It was 10 miles an hour before, now it's 9. I don't like it when these things get down to single digits in their forward speed, letting up on the gas pedal a little bit, and that just lengthens the duration of the event for everybody. Even for the northwestern Bahamas. Now, most of the Bahamas taking down the hurricane warning here at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but not for places like Freeport on Grand Bahama. Still got the hurricane warning there, same for Bimini and the Berry Islands there. And we still have no changes to the Florida watches and warnings. Still got the hurricane warning up there from Palm Beach County northward. And then we have our tropical storm watches and warnings. The tropical storm warnings inland over much of the Florida Peninsula and the eastern to central part of the peninsula. And these tropical storm watches now go all the way up to Charleston. These will almost certainly be extended northward. So no changes to the U.S. watches and warnings here at 8 p.m., including the storm surge watch, which is still in effect from Jupiter Inlet northward all the way to Ponte Vedra Beach, because we're still going to have a system that's right near the tropical storm hurricane threshold, plus or minus, doesn't matter a whole lot really in terms of the impacts as it goes up the east coast of Florida. Last few visible images of the day, you can see those big overshooting tops south of Freeport. So it's not all that far off the southeast coast of Florida. Switch over to the radar, you got some lightning data in there. You can show how persistent the convection is. This has got to be where the maximum winds would be, but we still have some pretty active bands. We've had some gusts to 40 miles an hour, risk of water spouts in these bands all the way up near Fort Pierce and St. Lucie, and then got another set of bands here that are in between Freeport and Fort Lauderdale, Miami. Now, when you deal with the overnight period, you got to realize that even if it's only a little breezy, a little windy when it's not raining, you get one of these bands come in and another one's about to come into Miami Beach here, it'll get a lot windier for that brief period of time. And at night, especially with some blinding rain for a short amount of time, you could really be caught off guard by being out on the road. So it's good to be indoors, even without the rain, gusting to 24 at Executive Airport, Fort Lauderdale, 26 in Pompano and West Palm Beach area. You've got some bands occasionally coming in. You're getting a break right now, but still gusting to 25 miles an hour. So, Paul, again, the Hurricane Center is still forecasting this to regain hurricane strength, but even if it doesn't, we're going to be dealing with at least a strong tropical storm and a long night of really unpleasant conditions at the coast there in southeast Florida.
Yeah, despite the fact that we're not seeing much right now here in Palm Beach, things will change again. Palm Beach County is where the hurricane warning begins and moves north. Let's look north here. We actually see some people that have been in and out of the surf down there, and I got to say that's pretty dangerous. There's a coastal flood advisory, high surf advisory, and a sky-high rip current danger here that's going to stay high for quite some time. But you're definitely kind of putting your own life at your own hands when you get in the water like that. And if you need help, first responders also putting their lives in jeopardy as well. As we look out here towards the Atlantic Sea in more and more ways, but also look at the sky. You see some blue sky, but also look at the spiral nature of these clouds. Some people call them feeder bands. No such thing. Bands don't feed the storms. The ocean does, and other things do. These clouds do not. Even rain bands don't. But you see the spiral nature. Those are the outer cloud bands we see there from Isaias approaching this area. So, yeah, it might not be raining right now, but it's coming. And also take a look at Lake Worth Pier. We're seeing the waves now crashing at the end. We have normally 20 feet from the bottom of the pier to the top of the ocean. So we're seeing waves easily 10 feet there, and we can see 5 to 20 foot tall waves as we head through the entirety of the approach and nearby passing and then the leaving of Isaias as we head over the next, say, 12 to 24 hours. So expect the surf zone to be a very dangerous zone to be in or near over the next day or so. We did see some surfers out here earlier enjoying a very rough and agitated surf here, but you got to do that with caution as well, because the rip current danger will remain long after Isaias has even left the state of Florida and moving up towards the Carolinas. But right now we are kind of enjoying the sucker hole of dry weather we have here. But Alex, we're going to see a lot of weather go downhill as we head overnight and into much of Sunday morning.
Yeah, and you're going to be on tomorrow. By the way, this is Paul's last segment with us. You're going to be up bright and early, so if you're with us tomorrow morning, I assume we're going to be looking at a very different Palm Beach, Florida there. Paul, thank you so much. Want to break from Isaias for just a moment to take you to space. Why? Well, because moments ago, the SpaceX Dragon capsule Endeavour undocked from the International Space Station. We know who's on that. Two NASA astronauts, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. They've wrapped up their historic 2-month test flight, and they're actually on their way back to Earth. It's going to splash down, that capsule, at about 2:42 p.m. in the Gulf of Mexico. So each one of those bullseyes, one of the potential sites, they're going to go with that Gulf of Mexico one, most likely near Pensacola or Panama City. Thanks to Isaias. We're back after this.
Twizzlers.
This is the weekend to stay home. This is the weekend that we stay with our families, we shelter in place. It's not for parties, just, be safe, be careful, and certainly stay off the beach. And it's going to only get worse.
We also have thousands and thousands of utility workers that are just standing by up and down the East Coast.
Good evening, I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. 77 million Americans in the cone with Isaias. It's now a tropical storm, but forecast to become a hurricane overnight. It's now leaving behind the Bahamas after battering that area. 2 people have been killed so far by the hurricane, now tropical storm. Meanwhile, it's now moving towards Florida, inching towards the coast, and it could scrape right up the coast, right on through tonight, tomorrow, into Monday. We've got expert analysis back at the Weather Channel, hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knabb and meteorologist Alex Wilson. We're your hurricane headquarters. Once again, back tonight, North Miami Beach. If you were watching last night, you've noticed 2 things. The wind is much stronger and the surf is much rougher. We've got a high tide right now. Wave height's now running about 5 to 6 feet, and the winds are running northeast at about 15 to 20 miles an hour. Dr. Knabb, we've seen the convection blow up this afternoon, and that does not bode well for waking up in the morning with a hurricane approaching the Sunshine State.
Yeah, Isaias is down but not out, and we can't take our eye off of it just because of the change in designation. There's not a lot of difference between 65, 70, 75 mile an hour max winds, and a lot of you are going to get tropical storm conditions from Florida all the way up the East Coast. I mean, this is going to be a big wind and water event for a lot of folks, and a tropical storm can in some ways, perception-wise, be more dangerous than a hurricane because it makes people think that it's not as potentially deadly as it is. So we've got to keep our eye on the ball here. It's also not moving all that quickly now. Northwest at 9 miles per hour, a lot more slowly than it was over the last few days, and that just lengthens the duration of the wind and the water event. Hurricane Center still has the hurricane warning up from Palm Beach County northward, and we have a lot of tropical storm warnings even in inland areas, and now the watches go up into South Carolina. They will get extended farther north with time. It's just that we're now a couple days away from the arrival of the tropical storm conditions up in South Carolina, so it's time for the watch. Still have a storm surge watch from Jupiter Inlet on the north end of Palm Beach County all the way up the east coast of Florida to Ponte Vedra Beach, where we could get 2, 3, or 4 feet of saltwater flooding right there along the coast. A lot of beach erosion, a lot of high rip current risk. That is a life-threatening hazard that often gets underestimated, especially when the weather's good and the ocean's angry. Look at the last few visible images of the day. You can see the low-level center emerging from Andros Island, now back underneath the convection, although it's not directly under the mid-level swirl, but kaboom! Look at that big blow-up of the cold cloud tops with the thunderstorms reigniting on the northeastern side of the low-level center. So the low-level center is out in here, and then you've got kind of this mid-level swirl, so it's not completely vertically aligned, but it's still there. It's still swirling, and look at these bands coming in to South Florida. We've had gusts around 40 miles an hour. You got the risk of water spouts, and as the sun goes down, these blinding rains that quickly come upon you when the new bands come in, like one coming in through Miami Beach right now, about to come into downtown Miami. It will suddenly get blinding rain, really gusty. You got to be off the roads tonight. Just not worth it. Trees could come down, power could go out, and in Broward County, even without some of the heavy rains right now, we're gusting to 28 at Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport, 36 at Pompano Beach. Up in West Palm Beach area, we've got a break in the winds, but we've got gusts near 25 miles an hour. Here's the track and intensity forecast that will get updated at 11 p.m. Eastern time. Hurricane Center still forecasting it to get right near that hurricane tropical storm threshold at 75 miles an hour. And then we're going to have a fast-moving but pretty potent tropical storm moving over the big cities of the Northeast. So here's what it looks like in the European model tomorrow morning. So with a center of circulation, if this is correct, right off the coast of Palm Beach, it will be blowing. And heavy rainfall and some very gusty winds going right up the east coast of Florida. And then the rest of the east coast, South Carolina, North Carolina, in for a big rain and flood event. Storm surge flooding possible in the eastern North Carolina, and then wind and rain for the big cities of the Northeast. So, Mike Seidel, we got to get that word out that tropical storms can take lives from water mainly, also from wind if you're not careful. And so I hope people don't make some bad decisions because they think that it's not a dangerous storm anymore.
No, and you know how many times we've had tropical storms, depressions, and then we have all that fresh water flooding. With Harvey, many systems have done that. Let's tell you what we know now. We've had 2 fatalities so far. So Isaias is now a deadly storm. 1 person was killed in the Dominican Republic. That was brought on by a tree falling down on a man, and then also a young boy, a 5-year-old child, was killed by a falling tree. Let me correct myself. 2 people killed in the Dominican Republic Thursday evening. 1 man was electrocuted. A 5-year-old child was killed by a falling tree. Right now, 16 Florida counties have been declared a state of emergency, and in the city of Charleston, South Carolina, they're opening several parking garages into next week free of charge. The city is also pushing back garbage collection 1 day. Meanwhile, back in Florida, the governor, Ron DeSantis, with press conferences today, discussing what they're doing ahead of this tropical storm, which may become a hurricane again by tomorrow morning.
So Floridians should be executing their plans, particularly if you're on the east coast of Florida, in the Palm Beach and north of there. You should have 7 days of food, water, and medicine. You very well may experience power outages, so just be prepared for that.
And once again, back at North Miami Beach, the surf is rough. It continues to be up. We've got high surf advisories. We also have the rip current issues. That'll continue through tomorrow. The beach was closed today. Lifeguards had their cones right now out on the beach. A few folks out here getting their toes and ankles wet. But these waves will continue to ramp up, as well as the winds. Here's our forecast for the Miami area. Now, in Miami-Dade County, we're under a tropical storm warning, as well as Broward County. The Hurricane Center dropped the hurricane watch for Broward County. We still have the hurricane warning from Boca all the way up to Daytona Beach. That's from Palm Beach County, St. Lucie County, Martin County, Indian River County, and then you get up towards Volusia and those areas around the Space Coast, which may actually see it go right over tomorrow night, late tomorrow night. That is possible late on Sunday night. So winds here overnight into tomorrow morning could gust over 40 miles an hour. Let me show you the squall video from earlier. This is mid-afternoon. This one raked a good deal of Broward and Miami-Dade counties coming through. A wind gust not far from here in Fort Lauderdale gusted to 58 miles an hour. The airport gusted in the mid-40s, and the airport's already had about an inch of rain. As far as rainfall forecast, about 1 to 2 inches of rain expected. We're not going to get a lot of rain because, once again, tropical storm Isaias is right side loaded on the east side, so a lot of the heavy rain, at least early on, is going to stay off the coast. We saw that also with Matthew. Let's go back to Alex Wilson in the studio. More analysis as, Alex, we track this as it slows down. Yes. That's a problem. We thought this would be out of Florida by tomorrow night or Sunday morning. It's going to stick around through Monday afternoon all the way up to Jacksonville before it heads towards the Carolinas.
Absolutely. And then we're going to be looking at that heavy rain work up to the northeast, the mid-Atlantic. And right now we're setting the stage for possible flooding problems with some rounds of very heavy rain and very strong storms into portions of Ohio, including here in Morrow County. We've got a tornado warning in effect until 9 o'clock. So we're going to keep this through the hour. You can see Highway 71 is included in this. It's the northeastern part of Morrow County. To give you some sense of where we are, we're in north central Ohio. You can see Cleveland on the top right-hand side of your screen. This is a radar-indicated tornado warning. The storm is moving northeast at 15 miles an hour. So similar to Isaias, these storms are not moving particularly quickly today. 15 miles per hour is a fairly slow pace for this severe storm that is capable of producing a tornado. Right now located over Mount Gilead, and this is heading towards communities like Cardington Cardington, Edison, and Chalk. Mansfield, you're up next at around 9:10 local time. So we're looking at that storm continuing to work off towards the north and east. The National Weather Service, again, some of the most immediate impacted locations, Cardington, Edison, and Chalk. So please use caution if you're in this area or if you know somebody traveling along Highway 71 there. Dr. Knapp, let's get back to our storm. Of course, Mike mentioned it's slowing down. Wind, water going to be a problem. Power outages could be a real issue overnight. Even though it's a strong tropical storm, that's plenty windy to take down some trees and compromise power. Yeah, and power outages are more than just an inconvenience. If we make some bad decisions, they can be surprisingly dangerous or even deadly. And I'm going to show you where I'm concerned about wind, and I want you to keep in mind these safety steps that you can take to stay alive during power outages. I've had to write and read too many reports from the Hurricane Center on people that died as a result of power outages. One of the reasons is they run a generator indoors. Don't run it indoors or in your garage or in your patio or even right outside the window. Get it away from the building, away from windows when the power goes out, and you want to keep that power going with a generator. That can be a very, very important thing to have. Don't use candles or any other open flames. Too easy to leave it unattended. It leads to fires too often. Stay away from down power lines. And as we talked to Bill Johnson, Emergency Management Director in Palm Beach County, Florida, a little bit ago, he was wanting us to emphasize how important it is for people to seek shelter in a facility that has backup power, or a friend or family member has backup power if you have life-sustaining medical equipment that needs electricity. Here's our tropical storm getting closer and closer to the southeast coast of Florida. Really big burst of convection there on the northeast side of the center. And here on the radar, you can see where that lightning is. That's got the strongest winds in that area, the strongest upward motion. But we've got some bands that are coming in to the southeast coast. Sustained winds of tropical storm force probably would start sometime overnight in southeast Florida and then go up the east coast of Florida as Sunday moves on. High chances at any spot on the east coast of Florida of sustained winds of tropical storm force, and increasing chances of those tropical storm force winds along most of the east coast of the U.S. Just watch the trends in these numbers. If it goes up for your location, then the chances of getting power outages and downed trees are going up. And Alex, I am super concerned about heavy rainfall and flooding in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and then the big cities of the Northeast. How many times have we seen flooding take lives in North Carolina in recent years? Yeah, too many times. It's driving into those flooded roadways, or water creeping into homes that causes a lot of problems. So I don't want you to sleep on this as this moves farther up the coast. Even if it weakens, the rainfall impacts are still going to be there. So South Carolina, you'll begin to start to feel those winds increasing later on Sunday, and flooding, I think, will be a real concern there in the low country of South Carolina. In North Carolina's Outer Banks, they've actually already ordered an evacuation for residents and visitors in Ocracoke. That starts in the morning. A decision about the northern parts of the Outer Banks, they're going to decide on that tomorrow. Up in New Jersey, the full moon Tuesday, they're concerned that that might actually coincide with the arrival of Isaias, and that could increase the potential for erosion on the beaches. So there are a lot of potential problems with this forecast and with this storm as it makes its way into sections of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast eventually. But I think rain, one of the greatest concerns, because flash flooding is going to be a real issue from parts of Georgia and the Carolinas all the way up into the northeastern states. We could just see too much water in a short period of time, and that could lead to problems. And as Dr. Knapp said, too many times we see people lose their lives by driving onto flooded roadways. Flash flooding, greatest potential here in that dark shade of green. That's Monday into early Tuesday. So we're looking at parts of coastal Georgia all the way up into Virginia. I'd even watch a place like Richmond for that possibility. And the storm taking the track it's going to, because of our two areas of high pressure. There's a little weakness in between those two areas of high pressure that this storm is able to sneak through. And it's also helped and guided by that dip in the jet stream. So that's going to wrap it right up and along the eastern coast of the U.S. So rain and thunderstorms likely to start our week through a lot of the southeast and mid-Atlantic. Going to kind of be a soaker for places like Charleston up towards the Raleigh area. Now on Tuesday, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania and Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island getting soaked soaked thanks to Isaias. Rain and thunderstorms, and we could pile that rain up. Take a look at the European model's forecast. Even as we get up into the Northeast and New England, plenty of 3 to 5 inch totals. Some areas where you see the orange, that's the potential for a ½ foot or more. So we could see flooding problems from Florida all the way up to Maine with this one. Of course, we start tonight in Florida, and that's where Mike Seidel is in North Miami Beach.
Hey, Alex, back at the beach, getting kind of dark now as the sun goes down and showers rotate in. Look at the palm trees with these winds. We're still getting gusts 25 miles an hour without the squalls. But I want you to look at the radar right now because we've got squalls rolling in and a special marine warning from the Weather Service. Some of these squalls may produce water spouts and wind gusts 65 knots. That's over 7. That's hurricane force offshore over the open waters. And this special marine warning goes until 8:15. We'll see if they extend it. But you can see showers rotating in. There's one right out there. You can almost see the rain shaft. But these are going to be rolling in more frequently overnight. And again, with these squalls, that's where we get the strongest wind gust. I mentioned earlier, we had a wind gust of 58 miles an hour mid-afternoon as that squall came in right off the open waters of the Atlantic. Stay with us here. Continuing coverage throughout tonight. Throughout the first part of the week, we're around the clock for you. Not only is Isaias heading in towards Florida, and it's likely to become a hurricane again overnight, the entire East Coast gets impacts. Yes, Philadelphia, New York, the Jersey Shore, Long Island, Cape Cod. We'll time it out for you. We've got everything you need to know and more field coverage. Stay with us here on the Weather Channel.
When was the last?
Love it that way.
Better days start with the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 88 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 74. Winds southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, partly cloudy. A stray afternoon or evening thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, scattered showers or thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel sitting here on North Miami Beach, Florida, as we watch what was a hurricane is now Tropical Storm Isaias. Forecast, though, to re-intensify back to hurricane status overnight. So we expect a hurricane to approach the Florida coast on Sunday. In fact, it may go right over Cape Canaveral tomorrow night, if you believe the European model, but it's going to be right along the coast. It is, however, east side loaded. So right now we're thinking the heavier rainfall, the highest totals may actually be up in the Carolinas early next week, Monday and Tuesday. With that said, we're going to have gusty winds in excess of 40 miles an hour here in Miami-Dade County and in Broward County, where there are tropical storm warnings. Now you get north of Broward from West Palm Beach County, that's Boca, Palm Beach, and then you get up towards Stewart, Jupiter Inlet, Hobe Sound, into Melbourne, Cocoa Beach, Titusville, and all the way up to Deltona and Daytona Beach. All those locations I mentioned, those towns and cities, are under a hurricane warning because we do expect it to re-intensify to a hurricane late tonight and tomorrow morning. You can see the surf is up and the skies are dark. We've got a lot of individual cells off the coast, and these are going to bring in some gusty winds and some locally heavy rain. We don't have a squall line like we had earlier. That really rolled through here mid-afternoon, produced a wind gust to almost 60 miles an hour here in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami Beach area. Let's go back to the studio. Before the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, Washington, Philly, New York, the coastal areas of Jersey Shore have to deal with Isaias. They've got to deal with some severe weather for the rest of this evening and tomorrow, Alex, and you've got the latest and more on that tornado warning in Ohio.
I do, yeah. You know, I also got to say, Mike, the lighting down there is about as perfect as it gets right now. We've seen this beautiful pinkish hue throughout a lot of those places in Florida. You know, perfect for photography.
I'll tell my crew here that the lighting is excellent, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm being chroma keyed in. This is actual Atlantic Ocean surf. You know, sometimes, Alex, the lighting is so good, you wonder if you're really, you've really got the scene behind you. But this is, I'm actually here on the beach.
Yeah, Seidel is real, and he is spectacular down there in Florida. We're going to check back in with you, Mike Seidel, in just a moment. But yeah, let's talk about those storms, because he's exactly right. We've been watching some severe weather. We are trimming back that area of our severe thunderstorm watch. So some areas in Ohio out of it now. We've got a little bit of Kentucky, southwest Pennsylvania, a little bit of Ohio, still a lot of West Virginia. West Virginia has really been where the action is today. We still have some warnings. All right, so Kanawha County, you're no longer under the warning. We've seen those strong storms get out of the Charleston area, up along 79, say towards the Clarksburg area, but east of those areas, we've got a few warnings, but we still have this tornado warning moving along I-71 there across, this is north central Ohio. So Cleveland here, Akron here, we've got Columbus here, so we're north of Columbus. Morrow County remains under a tornado warning until the top of the hour. And again, our one storm in West Virginia, still with that potential for some gusty, damaging winds. We've got another warning right there along the West Virginia-Maryland state line. So getting there along I-68 could see some troublesome weather. Tomorrow, the severe risk is going to head off to the north and the east. So getting up into parts of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, a lot of New York, including Syracuse and Albany, and then western sections of Vermont, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. This could set the stage for some potential problems when we get in on some big rain from Isaias as well. By the way, Torcon values, they're low, but they're not zero tomorrow. So we've got a 3 out of 10 on the Torcon for areas in upstate New York, getting into the capital region, over towards Syracuse and Binghamton, that I-81 corridor, 3 out of 10 for you guys, a 2 as we get outside of that zone. So again, low risk, I think more likely that we're looking at the damaging winds and the hail. But Dr. Nab, as we said, also could be looking at some big rainfall. And then when our tropical storm continues northward, that's anticipated to dump some good rainfall. I mean, not good, but healthy rainfall across this part of the country, too.
Yeah, so that trough headed into the northeast, causing all kinds of trouble.
It is.
It's causing the bad weather all on its own, and then it says, oh, I'll bring a tropical storm up, too.
Why not?
My goodness, what a troublemaker. Well, we have to deal with it. That's the reality, and it's dangerous. Watch the cone as we go through the Carolinas with a faster moving, pretty potent tropical storm, especially Tuesday into Tuesday night. It's going to be the big day for Hampton Roads up through New Jersey, Pennsylvania, the eastern part of Pennsylvania, and the big cities of the Northeast, and then up through New England. So let's pick it up on Monday night as things will start to deteriorate in North Carolina and Virginia. And then we could have a big-time rain and flood event in North Carolina, storm surge into the Atlantic coastal areas and up into the Sounds, even Sound side flooding on the Outer Banks as it goes by. And then look at the really heavy rainfall we could be getting in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, all of New Jersey, Allentown, Pennsylvania, New York City. It just goes on. And we get into Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, then New England is in the mix with some inland and coastal impacts. You could have down power lines. You could have, obviously, power outages, down trees, and flooded roads. And a big, big flood concern here in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, where the European model is kicking out more than half a foot of rain in many spots. Turnaround, don't drown. In Matthew in 2016, we lost a couple dozen people in North Carolina who drove around barricades or drove into water-covered roads. Now look, D.C., Baltimore, Philly, New York, all these big cities at least have the potential to get really, really heavy rainfall. So we've all, up and down the East Coast, got to promise ourselves we're not going to drive our car on any water-covered road or around a barricade. Keep the kids out of the water. And if the flooding gets really bad in a place like North Carolina, you've got to evacuate when they tell you to do so and take your pets with you.
Got some new video to share with you. Tropical storm Isaias in the Bahamas. At the time, a hurricane. Of course, it was downgraded to a tropical storm earlier today in that 5 o'clock advisory. This video from Andros Island, they were lashed by some pretty strong winds. Winds gusting as high as near 70 miles an hour in this location. Of course, you can see some debris getting tossed around the backyard. Those trees really working their darndest to stay up. But, you know, anything that's not tied down is going to go flying when you get these winds in excess of 50, 60, even 70 miles an hour. Here's another video giving you a sense of what the palm trees have been up against. Sometimes when you can listen closely, you can actually hear those gusts. I actually was, you know, kind of finding it interesting to listen to Paul Goodlow's shots earlier in our show there from South Florida as he got quieter and the wind got louder as the day went on, as the winds have picked up there. Well, it is 30 minutes past the hour. We welcome you back into our special coverage. We continue to track Tropical Storm Isaias. I don't want you to think, oh, okay, tropical storm, no longer a hurricane, no problem. That's not necessarily the case. We could still see hurricane force wind gusts into parts of Florida as we head into the overnight. There's the possibility this could strengthen. So I don't want anybody to let their guard down. And even those tropical storm force winds, they're strong enough to cause some big problems. So before we get to the forecast, let's get you caught up on what we know, what's making headlines right now with this storm. We've got 77 million people in the forecast cone for Isaias. And if it were to knock out power in Florida, officials there are saying it could take longer to actually get that power restored. Officials with Florida Power and Light say that COVID-19 safety procedures for their workers and their crews, that could reduce productivity and mean longer restoration time. So be prepared that if you lose power, it might take you a little bit longer to get it back up and going. Now, governors of North Carolina, Florida, and Virginia have already declared states of emergency out ahead of this storm. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, has been here watching this storm. You know, earlier today, it was not looking good. There are some things that I think are going to be working for it to at least keep its intensity, if not strengthen a little bit, but at least keep its intensity. And one of those is something you always talk about, the Gulf Stream. It's really warm there.
It is bathtub warm right off the coast of Florida, and the storm is going to be just following along the Gulf Stream. So it's going to go, I'm going to go where the fuel is. It's just they're going to have to fight off a little bit of wind shear and maybe some land interaction along the way. But the energy is there in the ocean. You can see that big blow up of thunderstorms over the last couple hours. So, you know, earlier this afternoon, probably at 3 and 4 o'clock, it probably was significantly below 70 miles an hour. But with the 5 p.m. advisory, plane getting in there, going through that big blow up, you know, it might be back up to 70 miles an hour. So it's going to have its ups and downs as it is teetering near that threshold between tropical storm and hurricane. Now, over the last couple of hours, the Air Force plane's been out and about. You know, the max winds are going to be in a really small spot. So, you know, they're not finding anything more than 50-something miles an hour, but they'd have to fly right through the max winds that are probably in a very, very small location if they're up at close to 70. But in any event, we've got ourselves a sizable tropical storm. It's got a pretty large envelope of circulation, and it's got very vigorous thunderstorm activity here on the northeast side. Again, look at that in the infrared. Just a really big blow up, the size of half of the Florida peninsula there. And if you switch over to the radar, it's pretty telling because the low-level center is getting up in here, and you got this mid-level swirl and all those thunderstorms that are not quite vertically aligned, but it's got a lot of pretty potent bands that are going to be providing some occasional really heavy downpours and strong winds even without the rain. You're gusting over 20 miles an hour there in Miami. Broward County, the gusts are over 20 to 30 miles an hour. 36 at Pompano Beach, and up in West Palm Beach, same kind of thing. You know, we could get gusts to 40 again, as we occasionally do, a little burst there near Jupiter. So, Mike, I think the main thing I would say to folks in South Florida about why it's important to stay off the roads tonight is that you might be driving along, and it might even be dry, and then all of a sudden, blam, you get this really potent band with blinding rain and strong winds. Maybe a tree comes down. I'd rather be at home safe.
Yeah, that's a good idea because you can see what the wind is doing with these palm trees out here, blowing them around. We've had gusts 35 to 40 miles an hour. We just had a shower come through the area. There's the surf from this afternoon as the sun went down. It has certainly got much rougher. We've got the rip current risk. We have the coastal flood advisory. Also, we could have a surge of anywhere from 1 to 2 feet. And here's the surf right now behind me. 5, 6 footers rolling in. These will be increasing overnight. And we do expect Isaias to become a hurricane once again before it closes right in on the east coast of Florida later on Sunday night. More coverage with us. Stay with us.
My patients, I often fell.
Welcome back into our continuing coverage. Tropical storm Isaias moving closer and closer to the state of Florida. We look right now live at Stewart, and the sun's going down. We've kind of got an interesting, pinkish hue to a lot of our locations. The seas, they've really been kicking up. The waves, plenty of whitecaps out there. You can see that very clearly here in Stewart. Pretty angry ocean. They always write about that in novels. The seas, the ocean was angry that day. Not necessarily the case up into places like New Jersey right now, but we're going to see those wave heights really increase as we go into the week. Isaias putting the entire eastern seaboard on alert. Now, Myrtle Beach, they've issued a civil emergency declaration. Local leaders there are urging residents to take all necessary precautions to prepare for this storm. Right now, you can see a calm evening, though, in Myrtle Beach with people out and about on the boardwalk. Wilmington, North Carolina, 79 degrees right now. New Hanover County, which includes Wilmington, they've got a capacity of 200 people at those shelters in the area. So that's going along with Red Cross guidelines. And at the height of Florence, the shelters had a capacity of 1,200. So that gives you a sense of what they're doing with this storm to manage the amount of people in these shelters. Isaias is going to bring some big rainfall to portions of the East Coast, including the Carolinas, Virginia, even up into New York, New Jersey, New England. We could be seeing rainfall accumulations in that 3 to 5+ inch range. There are some forecast models that put totals of a ½ foot all the way from Florida to portions of Maine. So flash flooding will be a real concern here moving forward. In the most immediate short term to start the week, we're looking at Monday into early Tuesday. Flash flooding possible from portions of Georgia all the way up into Virginia. So obviously, tonight and through tomorrow, we're looking at Florida getting a lot of the rain. But then Monday into Tuesday, it's parts of the Carolinas and into the mid-Atlantic. And then that threat goes up as we work our way up into the Northeast Tuesday and into Wednesday. For Charleston, we've got to talk about tides as well, because the low country, they've got all those flooding factors. It's not just the rain coming down, but it can be the tide that leads to some flooding problems or exacerbates the flooding problems. Monday morning, we've got high tide at 8:19. Later in the day, I think we'll be watching that evening high tide as well. As for a place like Charleston, you're going to see your heaviest rain during the day on Monday. By Tuesday, Raleigh's getting soaked at lunchtime, Durham as well, and that heavy rain continues to slide up into the D.C., Baltimore, Philly, New York, Boston areas through the middle part of the week. Winds and waves will be going up. Here's your wind speed forecast. I think we could be looking at some sturdy winds in the 35 to 45 mile per hour range into eastern North Carolina by your Tuesday morning. All right, I want to take it to North Carolina. Donnie Shoemate is the public information advisor for Hyde County there in the state of North Carolina. Your country right on the North Carolina coastline. So you're looking at wind, you're looking at the coastal issues, and then you're also looking at heavy rain. How do you prepare for all of these threats from the storm?
Well, it depends on any given storm. Obviously, we have Ocracoke Island in our county as well, which was really devastated by Hurricane Dorian. So that was our first concern, make sure we had good evacuation plans in place, and we did start that process pretty early on this one. We had some reduced ferry routes due to some shoaling that we had in one of the channels. So we started the visitor evacuation on Friday at noon, and we started our resident evacuation this morning at 6 a.m. So getting an early jump on it.
Absolutely. We saw the issues after our last storm, Dorian, so getting the early start. Do you think there will be any other areas that you'll need to get people out of, or was that really the area of greatest concern?
Right now, that was our biggest concern. We are going to look at the track and see what the intensity does tomorrow and make some decisions on the mainland. But right now, it looks like Ocracoke for the most part, and maybe some of our more vulnerable areas in the mainland.
We talk about issues like flash flooding, power outages. Are there areas that you're especially concerned about within your location?
Almost every area in our location. We're such a low-lying area, and most all of our townships are right on the sound, so we have trees all over canals, so it's always an issue with that. But we've got a great partnership with our local electric cooperative, and they have crews standing by at all times, and we really do well with them. So we're really happy to have them on our side.
We've got the pandemic ongoing as well, which I know is making things extra hard for you guys as emergency managers. What information or what are you trying to tell the people who live in your community to help themselves and maybe also ease the problems with sheltering and a pandemic?
Well, since we're such a low-lying area, we don't do any pre-event sheltering in our county, so all of that is handled through the state emergency management. And they have set up some non-congregant shelter areas if anybody is requesting that. I believe for the most part it's going to be in some hotel areas unless they get overwhelmed. But the state emergency management does a great job with that for us, and we have some transportation people that can take care of it as well. So we're in a good position for that.
Awesome. Well, Donnie Shoemate, Public Information Officer for Hyde County, North Carolina, thanks so much for your time. I know you guys are very busy, and they're going to be watching that forecast. Dr. Nava, changes in the track, as he said, could change where people need to leave or move to.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint who's exactly going to get the worst wind and water, but our confidence is very high that it's going up the East Coast through North Carolina and likely over New England, and a lot of big cities, a lot of people at the coast and inland along the way, with a potent tropical storm making its way quickly through the Northeast on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, we don't think it'll be a hurricane up in North Carolina or up in the Northeast, and it's going to run out of time after tonight and tomorrow to become a hurricane. Most of the models show in general downward trend in intensity, but a tropical storm with this much moisture moving over this many people is going to bring a lot of problems, and the problems in North Carolina start Tuesday, late Monday even, with storm surge and inland flooding potentially being life-threatening. And then look at all of this wind and rain going through the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast Tuesday night into Wednesday. Turn around, don't drown, and get ready for power outages.
This summer, the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 87 degrees, under partly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy, low 74. Winds southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunday, partly cloudy. A stray afternoon or evening thunderstorm is possible. High 92. Sunday night, scattered showers or thunderstorms. Low 73. Chance of rain 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. We're taking a pretty good gusty shower right now, tropical shower, not a squall like we had earlier this afternoon with a gust of almost 60 miles an hour. Behind me is the angry Atlantic, and you can see the waves crashing. 5 to 6 to 7 footers are going to continue to ramp up tonight as Isaias is likely to become a hurricane once again. It's a very strong tropical storm, 70-mile-an-hour winds. And keep in mind, there's really no difference between the impacts of a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm and a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane. We stress that all the time. They have to draw the line somewhere. So, and Dr. Nab will tell you that right now. Dr. Nab, give us a little bit more insight on what you think is going to happen now that we see the convection blowing up and what the hurricane hunters are going to be seeing over the next few hours before that 11 p.m. advisory.
All right, I think we'll continue to see a strong tropical storm, and it just might become a hurricane somewhere in the next several hours. And after tomorrow, it's on a downward trend, but a very gradual one. So we've got a potent tropical storm that's going to affect essentially the entire east coast of the U.S., and not just at the beaches. inches. Some inland areas as well. We have this big blow up of thunderstorms there northeast of the center. Now, I don't think, at least not yet, that the surface center is getting right underneath the convection there. It still seems to be a little bit lopsided, which is good news. We don't want this to just get vertically aligned and rapidly ramp back up. Doesn't look like that is happening or is going to happen, but the surface center you saw exposed right in there after it left Andros earlier is getting underneath the convection. But with the surface centers in here, and then the center of the blow-up is over here, and that's what the radar is suggesting. It doesn't look like it's wrapping up a ring of convection that's really strong. It's a sheared tropical storm, and just north of Andros, that's where the strongest convection is. But you can see a lot of bands that are occasionally pretty potent are swirling around in there. I mean, you got a strong tropical storm here and really low pressure. So no matter what, in these outer bands, you're going to get some very brief, very squally weather. Now, this future radar based on a model depiction might not be exactly right, but look overnight tonight. Oh, this is going to get close. If this is right, this nasty north and northeast side of it's going to get very close to the coastline. Could get some very gusty winds right there on the beach. Maybe not as much as far inland. Freeport, Grand Bahama probably going to be taking it on the chin. And then this whole mess just goes right up the east coast. So easily could have tropical storm conditions, maybe hurricane force gusts in some of those bands, especially on the north side. And then regardless of how strong it is or isn't, and it's almost certainly going to be a tropical storm when it gets up into the Carolinas, really significant risk of life-threatening flooding in inland areas of South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, getting up into D.C. and Baltimore, and then the big cities get involved when we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. And so this, I think, has the greatest potential to take lives. You've seen how many lives we've lost in inland flooding in Matthew in 2016, in North Carolina, and many other events. We've got to not drive our cars onto water-covered roadways. 24 people died that way in Matthew in North Carolina in 2016. Some of them drove around barricades. Keep the kids out of the waters. Snakes, sharp objects, chemicals, you get the picture. It's not very yummy water. And it's at least possible, Alex, that we're going to get kind of community-wide flooding that could prompt evacuations. And if people tell you to go, or if you're threatened by flooding in your home and inland area, don't get in your car to escape it. Go to the highest level, call 911, and stay away from that electrical equipment. Don't leave the pets behind. Yes. If you're leaving for flood waters or whatever it is, they need your help to stay safe just as much as anybody else in your family.
Yeah, too many times we've seen videos or photos of the pets chained up in the backyard or, left in a home where water was rising. They had nowhere to go. So if you're going, take your pets with you. Make sure you've got your four-legged family with you. Now, a lot of people have questions, Dr. Nav, so we want to help to answer some of your questions. Jared said, this question is from my 11-year-old son. We're in Bethesda, Maryland, which is, of course, inside the cone. We don't usually get flooding, but is there anything else we should be concerned about with Isaias?
Well, just because you don't usually get flooding doesn't mean it can't happen this time. If it can rain where you live, it can flood where you live, and it might rain a lot where you live. In Bethesda, though, I'd also be concerned about trees coming down. And so you want to shelter away from windows, lowest level, most interior room, and be ready for power outages and follow all the safety rules about staying safe during power outages. Don't run the generator indoors, don't light candles, and so forth. So a lot of dangers in that inland location in the D.C. area.
Something tells me that 11-year-old might have a future in weather, though.
I tell you, the kids are really good at making sure their parents do the right thing to keep the family safe.
Yeah, so
keep speaking up, kids. Keep asking those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have time, I think, for one more? All right. Well, we'll show you your rainfall forecast. This would include, obviously, Bethesda. Let's get Jared's son a little extra attention here. Dr. Neb, we look all the way up into North Jersey, Northeast Pennsylvania, even all the way up into Maine. There could be some totals that exceed 5 inches.
Yeah, so in the big cities and urban areas, I see two big potential problems. Urban flooding can happen so quickly, so easily, and in a tropical storm, you can funnel those winds in between the buildings, and you can have flying debris, and at the higher levels of high rises, the winds are even stronger. If you got a tropical storm at the surface, you could still have hurricane force winds up at the 25th or the 30th floor.
Yeah, so now's the time to bring things in from your patio. If you're in the track of this, bring things in from your backyard. Heck, we look at gusts in that 40 to 50 mile an hour range, your stuff's going to be flying around. Thanks so much for staying with us. Our coverage continues for you all night long and into your Sunday. We're keeping you safe. We'll be back after this.
At Heinz, every